I squint through the snowstorm and look down to my watch, raising it a little closer to my face for a better look, but I don't know why I bother. It's just a force of habit, I guess. The watch is broken. It's always broken. I should replace it really, after all. I mean, who wears a broken watch? I just can't bring myself to do so. It was passed down from my granddad through my brother. 3 different repair places have all turned me away and said that it was impossible to fix. Too old, they say. Sounds like bullshit to me, but hey, what do I know? I shiver and my gaze returns to my surroundings. I draw my coat a little tighter around my body. The storm rages. All around is snow and an endless world of white, illuminated through the dark with the mist-blurred orange of the endless, dutiful street lamps. I carry on trudging along my way. At the beginning of the night, right after the bus had dropped me off, I considered waiting in the spot that I was left behind, waiting for the driver to realize his error and to come back and get me. But it was just too cold for standing around, and so I started walking down the road, following the bus's direction of travel. It's been a few hours now and the bus never came back. So yeah. Hey, my name is Sam, by the way. I'm 15 and I'm lost in the snow. I didn't realize the mistake until the bus had driven away. The storm beyond the windows was too thick, and hell, why shouldn't it be dropping me off in the right place? It's always the right place. Never am I dropped off in the wrong location. Except for this evening, it would seem. This, the evening of the storm. I grimace and close my eyes tight shut against the sudden barreling gust of icy wind. I have no idea where I am. Maps isn't working, but I should be okay. I'll just keep following the road until I find something that I recognize. Soon, for sure. And so I walk. I walk and I walk. It's maybe 3 or so hours or so until I really start to feel the first stages of panic settling in. The air only feels like it's getting colder and colder, sharper and sharper. There's no one at home right now to come and collect me, so what am I supposed to do? I check my phone again as the battery steadily drops. The device shakes in my shivering hand. Come on, I mutter, grimacing, looking around for a countless time. Come on, give me something here, something. And if I squint just right, there through the blizzard is a different kind of light. Faint at first and paler than the orange of the street lamps, but it's different enough. Distinct. Yellow and soft, spilling through the windows of a long building, a little ways back from the road. It could be an office block or something. I decide to go for it, turning away from the road and trudging a path through the fallen snow to the building's entrance. As I approach, I realize that the building isn't an office at all. In fact, it's a school. Not mine nor one that I recognize, but a school nonetheless. Damn, it's probably locked up tight. I think aloud as I reach the front doors, but to my surprise, they push right open at my touch, and so I head on inside. It's not very warm in here, but hey, at least it's out of the wind and the snow. My footsteps echo on the hard floor. The door closes with a thunk behind me and the sounds of the weather are dulled. I draw down my hood and allow myself a breath. It fogs and clouds over into the surrounding air and I look around. The school's main lobby is illuminated like 2 of its offshooting corridors, with a faint, warning yellow. The light in corridor 3 is flickering silently, and the light of the 4th is non-existent. Dead dark and a picture of shadows. An unfamiliar emblem is emblazoned on the wall to my left, above the motto, Ad Mortem, Ad Lucem. A disturbing sense of unease passes through me. The light flickers and the air chills. I try to clear my throat, but the noise sounds distant and far away. My breath clouds around my face, and a shadow, vast and long, swims into my field of vision across the walls and the floor. Slowly, as if beneath a body of water, I turned my head. I turned to look behind me and stagger away in horror, as fast as this newly thickened air will allow. Beyond the glass of the entrance doors and drifting through the snow and shadows in the air is a living nightmare. What appears bizarrely to be something akin to an enormous eel, black and creeping, slithering its way through the evening air as if the storm were the bottom of the sea. Its jaw cracks open a slither, and as it passes me by, I see its teeth, gray and spiked and beyond count. Its eye fixes upon mine. It glows like the lights of the school, yellow, only brighter. The pupil of this great eel is rectangular, in the manner of a goat's, and deeper and darker and blacker than anything that I've ever seen. To meet this thing's stare is to look back into the eye of the abyss. It drifts past the door at a right angle, its long and snake-like body following on behind, and I tear away my eyes. Shit, I stutter uselessly. No way, and I turn tail and I run, away from the doors and deeper into the building. I pass by a window to my right and I see another dark shadow. A second of these creatures perhaps, as it swims through the snowstorm outside. What the hell is happening? I shout out loud, hoping to break through the sounds of my breathing and my beating heart, as I tear down the hall and around, corner after corner. I found myself drawn to an ascending staircase, and so up I climb after a quick check over my shoulder. I don't think that the creatures can enter into the building, but the flickering lights and the dancing shadows are playing tricks on me. I climb as quickly as I am able and I crash down into the nearest classroom, fumbling and stumbling amongst the chairs and landing on the ground in the dark. I catch my breath. The only light comes through the glass in the classroom door and through the long, wide window beside me. The blinds are open and the snowstorm rages beyond. The light of a street lamp, fainting as far as it is, filters calmly inside. It illuminates the tips and edges of the chairs and tables. It casts a glossy, reflective shine across the artwork, presumably drawn and painted by students, hung on the walls, and across the hair of a girl, resting casually on the counter. "Hey," she says with a smile, and I recoil in surprise. "What the? Who are you?" I ask, stuttering. "Oh, sorry about the eels. They're here for me, not for you. But best to avoid them all the same," she says, dodging the question and brushing a strand of hair from her face. She tucks it behind her ear. I realize that at some point I bitten my lip and it throbs painfully. I rub a thumb across the freshly forming bump. "What's your name?" I ask. "What are you doing here? Are we safe?" She shrugs. "I'm pretty safe, I guess, for now." She glances to the window and gently kicks her heel against the counter. "My name's Ellie. I'm just hanging out. Do you have a name?" "Of course I have a name," I reply, irritated. "It's Sam. Is this your school then?" She shrugs again. Kinda. I glance from the door to the window and clamber up to my feet, taking a seat opposite her on a nearby desk. My dumb teenage brain tries to work out if she's cute or not. She kind of is, I guess. More importantly, though, I'm also trying to decide if her presence here has heightened or lessened the imminent danger. "Could you just stop screwing around for a second? What the hell is going on? Eels. Massive eels in the snow. They aren't actually eels, obviously. That would be moronic. They just look like them. So what are they then? Why are they hanging around here, around your school?" She shifts and brings a hand up to her shoulder to rub her arm. "Oh, don't worry about it. It's not really your problem." "Not my problem," I repeat, eyebrows furrowed. Well, I would disagree a little." I throw out my hands. "What is happening?" Her tone shifts to a defensive one. Jeez, if you're gonna be a little whiny baby, you can just go, okay? I didn't ask for you to come here. I already told you they aren't here for you. They're here for me. Ellie crosses her arm and stands up from the desk, turning and walking away to face the window. A whiny little baby. Oof. We both watch as the enormous shadow of one of the creatures drifts past the glass, temporarily throwing a coat of shadow across the room. The snow falls. Diplomacy, Sam. I rub my chin. I want answers here. All right, I say, I'm sorry. She turns back to look at me and I speak on. I'm just freaked out, okay? You seem a lot more in control of the situation. I would like to be at the same level that you are. I hold out my hand and offer for her to shake it, a peace offering, and my grandfather's watch catches in the light. Her eyes dart to it at once and her expression changes completely. She squeals a little and puts her face right up close to it. That is gorgeous, she says. Oh my goodness, where did you get this from? Can I see it? Why is she not concerned by the monsters outside? Yeah, sure, here, take it. I unclasp it from my wrist and make to hand it to her, but she takes a sudden step back. Oh, no, it's okay. If you could just set it down on the table, that would be great. I pause. You want me to just set it down on the table? She nods and smiles pleasantly. Yes, please. Right. I do as she asks, and instead of passing the watch directly to her, I instead place it gently down on the nearest desk. She rests on the surface, one hand on either side of the timepiece, and gets her face really close to it. You were wearing it on the wrong wrist, you know, she says as she studies the thing. I shrug again, irritated. Well, I'm left-handed, so... And it doesn't work, she asks me. It's broken. Why would you wear a broken watch? Even a broken watch is right twice a day. I reply dryly, and to my surprise, she actually laughs. I chuckle too, a little awkwardly in surprise. Sure, she says, sticking out her tongue. The shadow of the eel drifts past the window. Again, we're casting a shadow as it passes us by, swimming through the rush of the storm. Please just tell me what's going on, all right? I say to her, my temporarily misplaced fear returning at full force. Come on, don't play around with me. Are we actually in danger? I certainly feel in danger. She ignores me, squinting carefully at the broken watch, muttering quietly in thought to herself. Time. It's such a funny thing. Hey, enough is enough, and I step forward. I reach out to grab her arm, but in my attempt, my hand passes right through her skin. Her skin and body and everything else. She is massless, and I watch as my hand passes effortlessly right through her arm, translucent and flickering. After a moment of processing, I take a silent and horrified step back. She sighs and straightens, brushing that same strand of hair behind her ear. She no longer looks as solid or indeed as grounded as she did mere moments ago. I'm sorry that you ended up here tonight, she says quietly. The wind whistles beyond the walls, and the snowstorm rages. So, what's your deal, Ellie? I ask, mouth dry. Are you a ghost or something? It's meant as a half-joke, really, but the question hangs in the air. She wrinkles her nose and then shrugs. I laugh nervously. So, are you a ghost then? I'm not alive anymore, if that's what you're wondering. She nods to the window. That's why the creatures are after me. I'm not still supposed to be here. Oh, I reply simply. For some reason, I see in my mind's eye a rough bird's eye view of the school, piled high with and surrounded by snow. Faint yellow light shining from the windows in the storm as the eels circled around and around. I could run. I could just turn around and run back the way that I came, back into the storm. though I'm not convinced by what she tells me. The idea that the eels will just ignore me is a nice one, but I don't know how true it is. I'm not sure that she really knows either. How did you die? I ask a little awkwardly, if you don't mind me asking. She doesn't reply at first. She only goes back to studying the watch. She holds her hands above it, and then I observe in awe as she draws them suddenly back, and a glowing representation of the watch's inner mechanisms are blown up and fixed in place in the air just above us. Cogs and gears all stilled. Whoa, I murmur, and she smiles. And then she sighs and the smile escapes from her face. You can see for yourself if you really want to, she says, pointing to the mirror in the corner of the room. Though it's not a fun story, so be warned. Cautiously, I make to head over, and she seems to have some second thoughts. Wait, she says suddenly. Actually, I don't think that's much of a good idea. You should leave, honestly. The creatures won't hurt you, I'm just waiting here. Seriously, you don't have to look. But it's too late now. My curiosity is piqued, and it might as well count towards my safety and survival, so I turn back to the mirror and I stride towards it. Wait, she shouts as I put out a hand, and it passes through the surface of the mirror like water. All around me at once is mist, swirling glass-like mist and distorted cries from behind. Ellie is calling back to me, but it's too late. I have stepped through and now I'm falling. There is nothing to keep me anchored, and I land with a thump and a groan at the entrance to the school. I am outside, but there is no snow right now. I jump to my feet and receive some strange looks as I'm surrounded by kids, all roughly my own age, though I don't recognize a single person by sight. I glance back to the building. It's very different in the pale gray light of this particular overcast morning, but it's the same school all right. But when? I'm an avid reader, and it always infuriates me when I'm forced to spend paragraph after paragraph and page after page reading through the main characters gaping and gawking in narrow-minded disbelief. So I swore to myself once many years ago that if I ever found myself in an unlikely and unpredictable situation, that I would do my best to just roll with it, to take stock and act as logically as I am able. So I take off my coat and I wrap it around my waist. I smooth back some of the ruffles in my hair, and I do my best to uphold that promise. I take a quick look behind me, but naturally any evidence of a mirror or any kind of ethereal doorway has vanished. Very well. I turn back to the entrance doors to the school and I join my apparent peers, climbing the steps and heading on inside. The kids all around me are giving me strange looks, and I am at once incredibly self-conscious. Who's the new kid? I hear one girl whisper to another. I glance to my left at the school's logo. Ad Meloria, ad Lusam. I wonder for the second time what it might mean. And nothing probably. Schools around here love their Latin mottos. Around where, Sam? Where the hell even are you? I reach down to my pocket for my phone, a renewed chance to check maps, perhaps, but my pockets are empty. You can't take anything with you, comes the voice of Ellie from above and all around me, and I swivel on the spot, staring up at the ceiling. Hey, where are you? I call out, and the conversations around me fall to a hush, and then change to stifled laughter. Who the hell is this guy talking to? I flush and make to stride down one of the school's corridors, bumping hard into a girl in a bright purple coat as I do so, knocking her books to the floor. She looks up at me and flushes in turn, brow furrowed. And it's her. It's Ellie. Ellie, I say. Help me out of here, please. At least a little clue would be nice. She stares at me, expression uncertain. And then after a pause, Sorry, do I know you? I turn my head. It's Sam. We were speaking just now. You called out to me. She shakes her head, maintaining eye contact. No, sorry. I don't remember you. I'm sorry. Get a grip, Sam. Think logically. Right, I manage. Sorry. Here, let me help you with your stuff. I crouched down to the ground to collect her books. 2 science books and a purple personal journal of some kind. It's fallen open to a page with the header, Last Day. Beneath is a list of stuff. I managed to read a couple of the items in confusion before she snatches it out of my hand. Apologize to Mrs. Reeves. Clear out locker. I look up at her. What does last day mean? I have to go, she replies quickly, stuffing her things into her bag and hurrying away into the crowds. Hey, I call after her. Wait up, come back. But she does not. Holy shit, I mutter to myself, rubbing a hand across my forehead. Language, young man, comes the sharp voice of a teacher behind me. I turn to him. Oh, sorry. He squints down at me. Do I know you, lad? No, I'm new. Right, well, you'll be expected in registration then, won't you? What's your name? I give it, and the teacher is, of course, unable to find me in the records at the desk. Well, he says, just spend the morning with Mrs. Reeves. Your timetable should largely follow that of the other students. Do you know if you're in history or geography? History. I lie and the teacher nods. I'll have a schedule printed for you. Room 8G for now though, Sam. And don't let me catch you swearing again. Right, yeah, sorry sir, gotcha. I nod and take a quick leave, running the great barrels of new information through my head as I walk, trying my best to process, to act soundly. Something rumbles in the distance. I swear that I can see a glimpse of a shadow pass me by, but when I turn to look for the shadow's source, there's nothing there, nor do any of the other kids seem to notice. I swallow anxiously. Control your fear, learn what's going on, and improvise. I have my suspicions already, but it would be good to get confirmation. I follow the letters and numbers written on the doors until I find classroom 8G, whereupon I knock and push through into the room, instantly awkward and aware of every movement of my body, as all the eyes of the kids behind the desks shift to mine at once. And who might you be? The teacher asks, looking down her glasses at me. My eyes dart from her to the kids in the class, to a girl sitting by herself near the back. Ellie, I blurt out without thinking, to an eruption of laughter from the room. Ellie herself flushes a deep color and looks down to the desk. Mrs. Reeves looks between us and sighs. I find that unlikely, young man. Your name, please. Oh, sorry, it's Sam. Well, Sam, you may as well take the seat next to Ellie for now, since you seem to know her already. As I walk the length of the room and settle into the seat, the whispers and murmurs and giggles rise up almost immediately. Ellie shoots me a dirty look. What the hell did you do that for? She hisses at me as I sit down. Sorry, I say back. It was an accident. I'm under a lot of stress, okay? Yeah, well, you're not the only one. She mutters under her breath. There's a strained pause. I think of Ellie the ghost that I met not an hour or so ago. Of the journal. Last Day. Ellie, I begin softly. How do I phrase this? Are you planning on this being your last day? What? Are you planning to kill yourself? She swivels to stare right at me. What the hell is wrong with you? She hisses, just a little too loudly. Ellie! Mrs. Reeves calls from the front, interrupting her reading of register. Ellie gives her an apologetic look and then turns right back to me. Who the hell are you? What are you doing here, Sam? The exact same questions that I was asking her a few moments ago. I asked first, are you or are you not planning to kill yourself? She chews her cheek and looks away. No, I'm not. I don't believe you, I say to her. It doesn't matter if you don't believe me. Just do me a favor and get lost, okay? To this, I say nothing though. A few seconds later, she turns back to me, eyes still downcast. Sorry, I didn't mean that. It's been a tough few days. Sure, it's okay. We sit together and yet a chasm apart. The bell rings to begin the day, and much to Ellie's annoyance, I spend much of it trailing her around. I'm forced away from her by way of various seating plans and the like. Some kids try to introduce themselves to me and I ignore them. A little rude perhaps, but I have priorities here. I'm trying to work out the lay of the land. Ellie rejects and pushes back all my attempts to broach conversation. I can tell that she's curious about me, but it isn't enough to stop her from keeping me at arm's length. She escapes me through the crowds completely at lunch and disappears entirely for the lesson immediately after. And then in the final period, I am witness to an excruciatingly cringy display of her public speaking, as she stammers and fumbles for a painfully long time through an extract of Romeo and Juliet. It's so bad, in fact, that I forget why I'm here for a moment and struggle to hold back giggles. Ellie seems less than amused, and doesn't even look back when I call out after her at the day's end. 2:59 p.m. read the clock on the lobby wall as I left through the doors. At this time of year, the sun had already begun to sink low into the sky. I was walking behind her and we were leaving the school behind. They let us go a couple of minutes early. A gust of wind ruffles through my hair and rustles the collar of my coat. My mood suddenly drops and I'm met with the stomach-churning sensation that I'm running out of time. Ellie, I call out, though it's becoming, I find, harder to speak. I'm forced to project, to raise my voice beyond a whisper. And there's that sensation again, the feeling of walking through water. I struggle against the winds and the thickness of its air. The lowering sun glints orange and sends Ellie's shadow long and dark back towards me as the gap between us widens. And all around are the creatures now. Slow and rumbling, they push aside the air at various heights. They look down to the girl, hungry and eyes aglow. One looks to me as it rises up and up into the air. Its jaw distends, and the mists shimmer and fog from behind and beside. I am lost in the cloud as I call out for her, but my voice does not work the way that it's supposed to. My sight is obscured and I close my eyes tight shut. But when I open them again, I am stumbling to the floor of the classroom. I land with a clatter and a grunt and a groan. Ugh. I clamber unsteadily to my feet and try to regather my bearings. Behind me is the mirror, softly shimmering as before. My disheveled reflection looks back at me. The classroom is just as I had left it, I think, though it's darker now. We are well into the night. Ellie, or the ghost Ellie, is humming softly to herself, still studying the projection that she has made of my watch's inner mechanisms. She raises her hands and makes little circles with her fingers, and as she does so, the projected gears and cogs turn with them. They slide into new places as she ponders and tweaks. Have fun? She asks, without looking over to me. No, not really. She smirks humorlessly. I'm sorry that I was in better company. Ellie. I step close to the girl and I sit down on the desk right by her as the snow rages beyond the window. What happened here? Look, if you haven't worked it out by now, then you're never really going to get it, Sam, she says. So you killed yourself and then, is that it? That was your last day. And you go home from school and take your own life. Take my own life. So dramatic, she murmurs. But still, she doesn't look directly at me. One of the monstrous eels shivers its way past the window, and this time I swear that I can hear a deep, low hiss to accompany its subtle rumbling. I swallow down a mouthful of fear and I return to awareness of how cold the room is. My breath clouds. Was it quite this cold before? The mood shifts. I've never been much good with stuff like this. It's just as well that I can't physically touch Ellie. Otherwise, I would be trying to work out whether I should awkwardly take her hand or something. Can I ask why? I say softly, and she finally stops doing what she's doing and turns to look at me. She chews her tongue for a moment and then shrugs and brushes that loose strand of hair behind her ear. I was sad, I guess, and there was no real chance for me to be less sad going forwards. There was just a lot of stress going on in my life. It was easier for everyone if I wasn't there. Bullshit, I reply, and she stares at me. Excuse me? I said that's bullshit, and suddenly I'm angry. How could you do that to yourself? How could you do something like that? What is wrong with you? Look at all that you've done. You're trapped here and you've messed up the cosmic order of the universe or something. I don't know. Why the hell do you even care so much? She shouts back at me. Why are you even still here? Just go, Sam. It's too late now anyway, it's done. I shoot a look back behind me, tensed and determined. Yeah, we'll see about that. I mutter and I turn my back to her. Sam, stop, she shouts, as I leave her behind for the second time. As I stride right on back towards the mirror, the shadows of the night blown out, billowing behind me. I step forwards and through the shimmering gates of the mirror. I am again surrounded by mist and swirling crystalline smoke, and again my footing is lost. I grit my teeth through the fall and stumble to my side as the hard, cold ground finds its place beneath my feet. I knock into a boy beside me, and he grunts with surprise. Hey, watch where you're going, all right? Sorry, I tell him, straightening and putting out an apologetic hand as I check to confirm my surroundings. The sun's position has changed back to the way that it was, back to morning. The school stands before me, and the same roster of faces trudge their way up the steps to the entrance. I glance down to my watch hand to confirm the time, to remember that A, I left my watch behind with Ellie, and B, the watch doesn't work anyway. Fine. It makes no matter. It's the dawn of the day, the same day. Final day. I set my jaw and I march my way up the steps and into the building. Looking around for her, I bumped into her just over there, was it? Why are you doing this, Sam? Comes her voice from above and all around. But I have the good sense not to shout out into the lobby this time in my response. I keep my head down and my mouth shut. And sure enough, there she is, holding her books to her chest as she rounds the corner and heads my way. She looks so sad. My heart throbs painfully and I push the feeling aside, heading over to her as she approaches. Hey, Ellie. She looks up at me, startled, and stops. Hey, hi, sorry, do I know you? Oh, shoot. No, I mean, yeah, you do. My name's Sam, I'm in the year above you. She wrinkles her nose. No, you aren't. Do you even go to this school? Yeah, right, just kidding. I'm new, sorry, I thought that we had met before, but maybe somebody just told me your name. Sorry. There is an awkward pause. What the hell is wrong with me? Stop apologizing, Sam. Oh, well, nice to meet you. She grimaces and strides right past me. I fume to myself quietly. Oh, you've messed this up already, you idiot. Well, screw it. In for a penny, in for a pound, as they say. I put out my hands. All right, you got me. You know what, Ellie? I'm not in the year above, and I'm not a new kid either. We met earlier this evening, and you were dead. A ghost, and now I'm trying to save you. This is the second time that I played through the school day. She glances over her shoulder at me, but doesn't slow her pace. She laughs awkwardly. Okay, great. Sorry, I really need to go. 8G, right? Good news, I'm coming with you. She clutches her books a little tighter to her chest as she weaves between the taller kids in the corridor. I put a hand on her shoulder. It's soft and warm, but she flinches away from my touch. Please don't touch me, she says quickly. Right, sure, sorry, but look, please just hear me out. I know what you've written in your journal, in the purple one. You've written out your last day. You've got bullet points for apologize to Mrs. Reeves and for clear out locker. She stares at me again as we arrive at the door to 8G. How do you know that? Are you some kind of stalker? What do you want? I want you to not hurt yourself when you go home from school, Ellie, okay? That's what I want. I say this a little too loudly. Hush falls in the corridor as faces turn to ours, and it takes a long, strained moment before the conversations resume, in a lower tone than they had before. Ellie fumes. Why did you have to say that? She hisses, and her eyes start to water and her cheeks flush. My life is none of your concern. Just go away, please. And with this, she turns and pushes through the door into the classroom. And after a beat, I follow. The same spiel plays out as before. Mrs. Reeves asks me to introduce myself to the class, though this time I remember to say my own name. And further, since it's neither recommended by the teacher nor does Ellie seem in any kind of mood now to engage with me, I decide to give her a little bit of space, and I sit instead next to the only other free seat in the room, next to a girl on the opposite side. Hey, she says as I sit down. Hey, so where are you from, new kid? I tell her and she shrugs. Oh, I thought that you might have been from Australia. I hesitate. Why would I be from Australia? She shrugs and goes back to doodling in her book. There is a rumor that we were getting a new kid from Australia is all. Shame, I really like the accent. There's another pause as I process this nonsense and then I chuckle awkwardly. Right, you did just hear me speak though in front of the class. I wasn't really listening. Right. Silence. Mrs. Reeves reads through the register and I tap my knuckles against the desk. And then I gesture over to Ellie. So, what's her deal then? Who? Ellie. The girl beside me looks up at once, eyes sparkling and eyebrows raised. She puts down her pen and smirks. And do you like her? I flush and try not to respond to this directly. Just wondering is all. She would definitely date you if you asked. Oh, that's adorable. Bit of warning for you though, new kid. I wouldn't go there. She's not exactly somebody worth associating with. And why is that? I reply, bristled. The girl shrugs. Hey, I mean you can if you want, but why bother? It's not like she's interesting or anything. But hey, it's a free country, so do what you want to do, I guess. I look back to Ellie. She sits quietly with her chin in her hand, staring ahead at nothing in particular. A long and slithering shadow is sent swimming across the room. I feel the seat and the desk rumble as it passes by, but nobody else in the room seems to notice. I swivel in my seat to look behind me through the windows at the back of the class, but there's nothing there. My neighbor looks at me amused. You're strange, she says simply. I reply, still looking through the window for evidence of the watchful, waiting monstrosity. But the bell rings and the morning begins, and it goes in much the same way as it did last time, with a few key differences. Firstly, there's no pretense on my part. I am 100% honest with Ellie. I walked through a mirror to get here. I tell her in the first lesson of the day, whispering to her from the seat behind. I'm not joking. This is the second time that I'm living through the day, honestly. The teacher's going to use an example from his home life in a minute. Listen. We do so, and sure enough the guy starts trying to link the subject matter back to a semi-amusing anecdote from his week. Ellie glances over her shoulder at me. You're freaking me the hell out. I don't know what you're trying to do, but please stop. I'm serious. I've been speaking to your ghost, Ellie. I know that you love mechanics and how things work, watches and stuff. You need to listen to me. "This is insane," she hisses back. "Who have you been talking to? This is cruel." I release a breath of frustration through my nose. "Why would you want to commit suicide? I don't get it. Your life doesn't seem that bad to me, please. Don't do this. Leave me alone." And with that, she turns around and ignores me for the remainder of the lesson, and then sprints away the second that the bell is rang. I run my hands through my hair. This shit is not working. Maybe I should just do as she says, just give up and leave her be. I wonder what she's doing now. Ghost Ellie. If she's watching me somehow, or if she's playing around with the watch or sitting alone huddled in that cold dark room as the monsters close in. I clench and unclench my fingers. I am here for a purpose. I didn't just stumble onto this school by chance. There's a reason, there must be a reason, and Ellie can be saved, I'm sure of it. So I keep on trying. The second lesson, I give her a bit of space and try to come up with a plan. I'm struggling to think though as my eyes feel heavier and heavier with every blink. I've lost track of time and my body clock is all sorts of screwed up right about now. I put my head down and my hands on the desk just for a minute and I try to think. I see in my mind's eye the swirling shadows of the eels, eyes glowing in the wintry gloom as these snow cascades all around. I see Ellie, her hair rippling gently as if underwater. She looks back at me sadly as she rises up and out of my reach into the storm. I can see myself in the blizzard. I see the dark and emptied school collapse all around me and caught in the gale. I see the lights of the street lamps go out one by one as the monsters close the distance. Their jaws crack open with a hiss of icy steam, and I'm jerked awake from my dreams by a shake of my shoulder. "It's Sam, isn't it?" says the teacher, an eyebrow raised as I blink away my sleep. I can hear some of the other students giggling. "I can only apologize if my lesson has quite literally bored you to sleep, but do try to stay alert, thank you." I nod apologetically and the teacher returns to the front of the class. I look immediately over to Ellie, but her eyes are downcast. Determination runs through me like a river. Save her. I'm able to follow her to lunch this time. She doesn't escape through the crowd, and so I watch as she gets her food and takes it to a table outside in the sun. It's still pretty cold, but I guess it's where she would rather be. I take a seat not too far away, but one out of her immediate line of sight as I try to plan my next move. I suppress a yawn and mull over my options, and as I do, a group of kids approach her. 2 boys and 3 girls. Ellie is not looking, but the group are clearly egging each other on. I can't hear what they're saying, but one of the girls is shaking her head and laughing. I watch as another one of them raises a plastic bottle and unclasps the lid. As the bottle is aimed and the first girl suddenly reaches over and squeezes the plastic between her hands, and a stream of water is blasted right into the side of Ellie's face, down her clothes and over her food. And the worst part for me is the fact that she doesn't say a damn thing. She stays totally quiet as the group laughs. "Oh my God," one of the girls say. "I'm so sorry. It wasn't me, it was Karina. She did it." And they keep laughing amongst themselves, passing blame as they make a quick and gleeful exit. Ellie only sits there in silence. I get up at once to go over and see if she's okay. "Hey," I say as I get closer, "are you alright?" But it's clear as I draw near that it wasn't water sprayed over her. Based on the smell that rises, thick and strong, it's vinegar. Jesus, I mutter as I stand there beside her awkwardly. That's messed up. Ellie says nothing. Her eyes are covered by her fringe, but her cheeks are a deep scarlet, and she grabs up her backpack and strides suddenly off, leaving her ruined lunch behind. "Hey, wait, are you alright? Ellie!" I call after her, but she sprints away into the building and disappears around a corner. "God damn it," I shout out to no one in particular. A gust of sudden wind rustles my collar. And so the day goes on. Ellie misses the next lesson as she did on the first playthrough, though I know why this time. And when she finally returns to English, the last lesson of the day, I feel my chest tightening as I realize that once again my time is running short. I head right over to her and she takes a step back at my approach, frustrating me further. "Ellie, I'm not your enemy here, for God's sake," I say to her. "Please, just hear me out. You're gonna be picked on to read a passage aloud today, so maybe just read it over a few times in advance to practice. Act 4, Scene 4, I think it was." She squints at me as if trying to read me, searching for something inside perhaps, and I wait patiently for an accusation or an insult. But she says nothing. She simply sighs and walks right past to her seat. I am struck, and not for the first time, by an ethereal kind of deep sadness, one that troubles and dismays me as it washes over me. And as it happens, my advice was useless anyway. Ellie never gets to read out a section of Shakespeare. As the time draws near, instead of watching Ellie get called upon, the head teacher instead opens up the classroom door. The heads of all the students turn to look, and he calls Ellie out from the lesson. The class falls into a hushed silence as she gathers her things and steps outside. And after another minute or two, I excuse myself to the bathroom and I set off in pursuit. It takes me a good 5 minutes to locate the head's office, but once I do, I crack the door, cringing as I do so and hoping not to be discovered. And I listen in. "Very troubling, Ellie," comes the voice of the head, and then he pauses. But there is no response from the girl in question. He speaks on. "We take threats of suicide very seriously, young lady. Very seriously indeed. Now, I wasn't there this morning, and I don't know exactly what was said." I grimace and think back to what I had blurted out to Ellie in front of all those people. "But it's important that we talk through this. You always can rely on us here." Ellie snorts humorlessly. The head clears his throat and continues. "And we have arranged for you to speak with the school's counselor tomorrow morning. This will continue for as long as necessary. I will also, of course, need to inform your parents." Ellie changes her tune here. I can sense the sudden desperation in her voice as she begs. "No, sir, please don't call my parents. Please, it was a dumb joke. Sir, honestly, you don't need to call them. Please don't." "I'm sorry, Ellie, but I have a duty of care." And with this, Ellie breaks down. My guilt is sharp as she cries behind the door, and I take my leave. What's the damn point? I return to English and I wait for her to come back, but she doesn't. Then at the end of the day, I am again waiting by the steps to the school at 2:59 p.m. There goes Ellie. She walks right by with her backpack full. I call out to her and she picks up the pace. The air grows thick. "No," I mutter out loud. "Not again, please." A gust of wind ruffles through my hair and rustles the collar of my coat. It's becoming harder to speak out, and I'm forced to project to raise my voice beyond a whisper. And there's that sensation again, that feeling of walking through water. I struggle against the winds and the thickness of its air. The lowering sun glints orange and sends Ellie's shadow long and dark back towards me as the gap between us widens. And all around us return the eels, slow yet rumbling as they push aside the air as they form from mist and shadow. They look down to the girl, hungry and eyes aglow. They are closer this time. One looks over to me, its hazy yellow eye meets mine, and the clouds shimmer behind and beside. I'm lost within it as I call out for her, but my voice simply does not work in this moment. My sight is obscured and I close my eyes tight shut. When I open them again, I am stumbling to the floor of the classroom. I trip and crash into a nearby desk with a grunt and grab hold of the counter beside me for balance. It takes a second or two for the world to stop spinning. I catch my breath and watch as Ellie plays with her holograph on the watch. She carefully moves a gear into the new location. I wait for her to speak and eventually she does. She winks and sticks her tongue out at me. Oh, no luck again, huh? I am met with a sudden anger and I rise up to full height. What the hell is wrong with you? This isn't a game. I'm trying to save your life. I didn't ask you to do a damn thing, she shouts back. Why do you even care so much about me? I throw out my hands. What do you want, Ellie? Do you want these things to get you? These eels in the sky? What even are they? Do you want to be saved? Ellie makes an ooh sound. What a big hero we have over here, she says sarcastically. The big hero wants to save the poor girl. Well, it's too late. My decision was made in hell. I don't regret it. I'm fine, it's done. It's done and I feel great. You feel great, she shrugs. Sure, why not? I'm not scared, I'm not afraid, I'm not terrified about what's going to happen next. There is no next. I'm free, Sam, I'm free. Well, if that's true, I say, then why not let those things outside come and get you? Why not leave the building and let them take you wherever? Then you'll truly be gone forever, I guess. Or wherever they take you. If they're even supposed to be here at all. To this, Ellie says nothing. She brushes a strand of her hair behind her ear and she looks out the window. The room, I suddenly realize, appears smaller than it was before. The desks and chairs are more closely clumped and the shadows are darker. The students' paintings hung up and across the walls were their colors always so dark. And some of them, the self-portraits, the eyes, no longer look as they did. The lines and these scratches in the paint appear more pronounced. The snowstorm rages, and the monsters drift through the wind. This place is getting smaller, isn't it? I ask Ellie, looking around. The walls are closing in, literally. She nods and gives me a half smile. It won't be long now, I should think. I slump back down on the desk and watch the snow, thick and white against the glass. I look down at my wrist to get a sense of the time, but of course, there's no watch. And as always, the watch is broken anyway. I turn to observe Ellie play with it for a minute, or at least the holographic spectral representation of the thing. So how come you're so into that stuff then? I ask her, and she glances at me and brushes her hair from her eyes. It's just the intricacy of the mechanisms, she replies. Rotating gears, all turning and spinning together to make something work. I just think that it's fascinating. They make a thing greater than the sum of their parts. I nod quietly as I watch. She shoots me a look. Well, aren't you going to make fun of me? Why would I do that? I reply. I agree. You agree? Yeah, I mean, I'm no engineer, but my expertise isn't to quite the same level as yours. I point to the ghostly gears and pieces of watch, spread out as they are in the air above us. But it's still interesting. She says thoughtfully. We sit quietly for a while. After a few minutes, she sticks out her tongue in thought and furrows her brow, experimenting with the watch pieces and trying them in different locations, and I try to force down a rush of feeling. We're running out of time, aren't we? I say. Time, she echoes and then nods. Yeah, we are. I don't want those things to get you, Ellie, and I don't want to be left here alone. I told you, Sam, she says, but she says it gently. There's nothing keeping you here. The door is still there for now. You could leave if you want. Yeah, there is something keeping me here, I say quietly. I can't just leave you behind. It's okay, she says, but I shake my head. Tell me about you, I say, and she stops, and then swivels on the edge of the desk that she sat on to face me. She cocks her head. Tell you about me, I shrug. Sure, what's your story? My story? She laughs, and it's a nice sound, though it fades quickly. She rubs her arm and looks down to the floor. There's not much to tell. My dad was military and so we moved around a lot until recently. My parents are nice enough people, but they're so cold. I could never talk to them, but I also couldn't stand letting them down. She sighs. I was one of those gifted kids, the ones that people make memes of nowadays. Wasted potential, etc. Honestly, it's a lame story. I like to draw. I like opening things up to see how they work and screwing around with gears and bolts. I moved to this school 2 years ago because I was bullied at the last one. It's technically better here, I guess, but nothing works for me. Nothing works out for me. And I was sick of it, Sam. Sick of not being in control. And so I took control and I made a choice, and I should stand by it. She looks right at me, but I don't see surety in her eyes. I don't know what it is that I see. And what about you? She asks. What's your story, crazy boy who wandered into my school? Pretty normal. I was born further north but moved here when I was really young. I go to St. Richard's School. I don't know that one, Ellie replies. Yeah, it's pretty far away. I don't know how I ended up here, to be honest. It's just where the bus dropped me off. It never gets lost, but last night I guess it did. I sigh. I like football, my favorite color's green. School's pretty okay for me, I guess. I'm not one of the popular kids, but, I do okay. She nods. And this watch, it's old. Did you get it passed down to you? Yeah, it was my grandpa's originally. That's cool. So why did he give it to you? She asks. Oh, he didn't give it to me specifically. He originally gave it to my older brother. It still worked back then. So did your brother gift it to you after he broke it? Not exactly. I reply with a sad smile. I inherited it after he died. Oh, Ellie says, as the dulled sound of the storm rumbles softly outside. I'm sorry. Do you mind me asking how he died? I hesitated, but then... He killed himself, actually. Oh. And we say nothing for a while after that. A long, long while. The terrible shadow of a drifting eel passes over the classroom and it brings with it renewed, both the lasting and the very active fears that I've been battling with since the beginning. Let me help you, Ellie, I say to her softly. I watch as quiet tears start to run down her face. Sam, I'm sorry, it's just too late. Too late? No, I refuse to believe it. And so without another word, I rise from the desk. I turn and I grip my teeth and I return to the mirror, striding on through and wincing as I'm once again enveloped by swirling mists and glass-like fogs. I clench my jaw and with a little stumble, I land this time on my feet as the vapor-like mists are blown out from my shoes and disappear into nothingness. I struggle with a momentary bout of queasiness, but I force it away. I open my eyes, and there is the school, as always. Kids hanging around and heading on inside. And above, drifting through the air is one of the creatures. Shadowy smoke like black. It slithers over the building with a low hiss. I watch, paralyzed as it cracks open its jaw, showing me its monstrous teeth as it swims quietly overhead. It brings with it the cold, a chill that shivers across me as I watch the monster disappear into the air, fading away as quickly as it had appeared. I've got to make this one count. I break the spell and jump up the steps and into the building. I ease my way through the crowd and wait by the corridor that I know she's going to come from. Any second now, and there she is. Hey, I say to her as casually as possible, and she looks up at me, in her world for the first time. Hi, she replies cautiously, and I gesture to the handfuls of books that she's carrying. Can I give you a hand? She looks at me in confusion as kids wind their way around us and through the lobby. With your stuff, I mean, I can help you carry it if you want. Oh, she says. No, it's fine, but thank you though. Sure. Hey, could I walk with you? She hesitates again and looks around, looking for some evidence that this is a trap or a play of some kind, and my heart goes out to her. Yeah, that's fine, she says quietly, and so we walk together, through the lobby and down the halls to 8G. So, are you new here then, or? Yeah, I reply. I'm new. I'm Sam, by the way. Ellie. She gives me a quick half smile. I'm going to register right now. I'm in 8G with Mrs. Reeves. Oh, yeah, that's the same for me. Is she nice, Mrs. Reeves? Yeah, Ellie replies, and I detect a little melancholy in her voice. She is nice. I have to talk to her today. Oh yeah, how come? I ask, and again she hesitates as she thinks on how to respond. I just need to apologize for some stuff. She's a good teacher, and I feel like I'm letting her down. If she's really a good teacher, then I'm sure she would disagree or understand at least. I offer, but Ellie only shrugs as we enter into the classroom. Once the kids have all settled down, I am once again asked to introduce myself. I give the correct name and coolly take my seat beside Ellie. I suppress a series of yawns and have to force my eyes open at various intervals as the morning progresses. I'm so damn tired. I am perhaps also a little too overbearing in my attempts to get Ellie to open up. I can imagine you, reader, shouting at me to chill the hell out, and I get it, but cut me some slack. I'm under a lot of stress here and time is not on my side. I'm just trying to help this girl, okay? Since she seems so reluctant to do it herself. I tell her about when I was bullied as a young kid, try to get her to open up in turn. She is sympathetic but a closed book. She's so different to how she is in that classroom, compared with the ghost Ellie. But I persist. She gets frustrated with me at lunch when I refuse to let her sit outside. I try to steer her elsewhere, but she doesn't understand why, nor can I really explain why. I am distant during the mealtime conversation as I watch with one eye over her shoulder, making sure that the group with the bottle of vinegar don't come this way. And when it comes time for her to speak out in English, I cringe through her dreadful reading, but I do my best to nod along and to seem supportive. It's fine, I whisper from beside her. Just take your time. But she shoots me a look, and I'm not sure if she even appreciated my support, or was only embarrassed by it. And by the day's end, as the lesson draws to a close and we're in the process of gathering up our belongings. Hey Ellie, so, what are you up to this evening? I ask her, and she laughs nervously. What? This evening, what are you up to after school? Oh, I'm busy, lots of stuff to do. Maybe we could do it together. I gather my courage. Maybe I could come around. The kid at the desk beside us shoots me a look and a smirk. Ellie flushes. You want to come around to my house? Sure. Why? Why? Because I struggle for justification and I swallow my pride. Because I like you and I want to spend time with you. You like me? No, you don't. You've known me for a day. Her body language becomes more uncomfortable, restless. I'm also not thrilled by this rejection. I'm no ladies' man, but I didn't think that I was that bad of a catch. I think it could be fun. I manage, glancing down to my non-existent watch, and then up at the clock on the wall. 2:57. Sorry, Sam, I'm not sure. I'm just worried about you, Ellie, is all. I say, conscious of the time ever ticking away. This makes her pause. She repeats my words. Why would you be worried about me, Sam? I shrug and try to deflect. I don't know, you seemed a little sad today. I seemed a little sad. Geez, is there an echo in here? I chuckle anxiously. Sam, you've known me for a day. How do I seem a little sad? I just don't want you being alone tonight, that's all. Maybe I could come back and spend some time with you at your place. She takes a retreating step and adopts a cold, defensive stance. You know that something's up, don't you? What do you know, Sam? What's going on? I glanced to the clock. The other kids have all filtered out of the room now. 2:58. It's only Ellie and I. Ellie, I just don't want you to do anything stupid. Something that you might regret, I guess. There's still so much to be positive about. You have so much value in your life, even if you don't see it. Ellie puts a sudden hand to her mouth to repress an escaping sob. I begin to panic as her eyes start to fill with tears. It's that obvious. You've known me for a day, and you already know, don't you? That I hate my life. If you can see it, then who else can? Does everybody know? And nobody gives a shit. She chokes out her words. I'm just done, Sam. I'm so done with all of it. Ellie, it's okay, I didn't. But Ellie runs off. Through the door and down the halls I take after her. Ellie! But through the school she goes, out and descending the little stone steps in long strides. And the air grows thick. No! I scream. Please just stop! A gust of wind ruffles through my hair and rustles the collar of my coat. There's that sensation again, the feeling of running through water. I struggle against the winds and the thickness of its air. The lowering sun glints orange and sends Ellie's shadow long and dark back towards me as the gap between us widens. No! I cry out. No! And all around us are those terrible, nightmarish creatures. They seem faster now, slicker in their movements, rumbling as they push aside the air, slithering through the growing mists and deepening darkness. They look down to Ellie, hungry and eyes aglow. The sky, it would suddenly seem, is full of them. They shimmer with the clouds, and my line of sight is lost beneath billowing mists and swirling fogs. I'm falling, my throat hoarse and hands clenched as the winds rush past my face. And here I am, stumbling and staggering to the floor of the classroom through the mirror. I keep my footing, but I knock into a group of clustered chairs upon my return. I grab a hold of a desk for balance as I catch my breath, and I wait for the world to stop spinning. I retch as my chest rises and falls. I look up to see Ellie sat there cross-legged on the counter. She isn't playing with the watch this time. She makes no jokes. She's just looking at me in silence. The counter is closer to the mirror than it was before. The room is smaller, yet the window, it seems, is wider. I can see the monstrous eels swimming patiently in the world beyond, drifting through the snow and the storm and the darkness. The rumbling is ever present now, anticipatory and warning. I can feel the vibrations through the wood of the desk. They're closing in. Slowly but surely the walls are closing in, and the window is widening and the storm is growing stronger. I sigh. I keep failing, Ellie. She says nothing. Do you even want to be saved? Again, she says nothing. I don't get angry though this time. I just rub my jaw and I look through the window. I'm not some delicate flower that needs saving, Sam, she says. I can't just sit by and watch you throw your life away. I made my choice, Sam, it's done. But it doesn't have to be, it doesn't. The mirror, the creatures, you've been given a second chance, don't you get it? And you have to take it, you have to take it. It's my life and I'm allowed to do with it what I choose. But is this what you want, Ellie? What you actually want? It can't be. I'm sure of it, I've seen it in your eyes. A part of you regrets this, all of this. I'm not happy when I'm alive, Sam, she says firmly. And I was tired, so tired. And now I'm free. But don't you get it, don't you see? The way that you are now, inquisitive and funny and lively, and you give out as good as you get. You're self-assured and confident. She flushes. This, Ellie, is how you could be all the time when you're alive. I'm not saying it's easy, but practice makes perfect. A change of mindset is a good start. Get some meds, some professional advice, and a change in how you project yourself. I stumble over my words. I know that I'm spewing a lot of cliches here, but I'm speaking from the heart. In the corner of my eye, I catch glimpses of the painted portraits across the walls. Clumped together now, there is essentially no wall space between them. The faces are dark and twisted, scary and unsettling. I struggle to focus on them for too long, as one struggles to focus on faces in a dream. Ellie looks to my grandfather's watch, majestic but broken on the surface of the desk. She puts out a hand and the projected gears and cogs all spin in an intricate pattern right above it. And very softly she says one more thing. "You can't fix a person's head in a day, Sam. No, perhaps not, but I can convince them to live till tomorrow." And so I turn, exhausted. Shadows swim in the corners of my vision and my movements seem paradoxically both airy and sluggish, but I stride onwards. With the rumble of the eels and the hiss of their terrible jaws in the back of my head, with the roar of the winds in my ears, with body bruised but constitution sharp, I go for one more time. And this will be the last time. I can feel it. No more chances now as I make my final march to the mirror between the worlds. So, through the mirror I go, wary but bitterly determined. Ellie wants to live. She might still be too stubborn to admit it, but she wants to live, and I can see it, I can feel it. I know what a will to live looks like, damn it, and what the lack of one looks like too. The world warps around me. The rumbling and the hissing grows louder as that crystalline smoke and mist blows up and around my face and the wind roars. But I land squarely on my feet. The clouds dissipate and without skipping a beat, I head directly towards the school doors. The shadows seem darker now. There are monsters in the air, I can see them, though I pay them no mind, ignoring the fear that tries to take its hold on me as I walk. As I approach the front doors, I allow a deep breath before heading inside. All around me is the typical childlike bustle of a relatively mundane school day, supposedly at least, but this is anything but. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinary because I get to spend it with Ellie, with the most interesting girl that I've ever met. And there she is. She hasn't noticed me yet, but she approaches, clutching her books to her chest. I gather my courage, and from above comes a voice. "Ask me about my jacket," she says in a whisper. "Make sure to ask about the jacket." I log her words as her past self enters into speaking distance. "Hey," I say to her, and she stops and looks up at me. I smile, and cautiously she smiles back. I shrug apologetically. "Sorry to bother you," I say with a lopsided grin that comes all too naturally. "I'm new here," I pause. "Well, kind of. I'm only here for the day, really. And I think I'm supposed to start in 8G? "Oh," she replies. Yeah, I'm in 8G. Do you want me to show you?" I nod. "Yeah, that would be great, thanks." And after she gestures, I fall in step alongside. I comment on her coat. "I like your jacket." It's true. She looks at me, gauging my authenticity. "For real?" "For sure, it's cool." She tucks a strand of loose hair behind her ear. "Thanks," she says, and I hear warmth in her voice. "My name is Ellie, by the way. It's nice to meet you." "And you," I reply. "My name is Sam." And so the day goes on, a day like so many before it, a day uniquely and tragically beautiful. Many days are, I start to realize, when one cares to consider. I actually pay attention to her as a person today, not just as a project to fix. I noticed for the first time the flash of a shining silver watch of her own beneath her sleeve, and I ask her to show it to me. She does so gladly. I ask her where she got it, and she says that it was a gift from her parents for good grades, about 3 or so years ago. She gets sad and tells me that she doesn't do so well in school anymore. She finds it harder and harder to focus, to care. Her grades are slipping and she feels like they'll never come back up. "I just don't have the right headspace," she murmurs to me as she doodles in the corner of her textbook. I doubt that, I reply. I don't know how to advise you, but I really believe that you can get back into the zone. Someone like you can find a way back. She scoffs, but I catch a little smile as she does so. I talk to her about my own watch, how it's broken and timeless. I describe it to her and she suggests some ideas on how to fix the thing. But of course, her suggestions go in one ear and out the other. She laughs when she catches the expression of cluelessness on my face, and the day goes on. I sit with her at lunch, on the little table just outside. I watch as the bitterly familiar group of kids approach, 2 boys and 3 girls. They aren't in Ellie's line of sight, but they're clearly in the process of egging each other on. I wait for them to approach, but it's taking them longer to do so this time. I think my presence here is making it harder for them to make up their minds. I decide to call them out preemptively. "You guys okay over there?" I said, amicably enough. They laugh as if sharing some intense and intimate joke. They come a little closer. "You two having fun?" One of the boys says as a girl glances to her friend with a grin, raising the water bottle filled with vinegar at the 2 of us, moving to unscrew the lid. I reach up and I grab it right out of her hand. As expected, the group acts as if I've done them such a great dishonor. "Chill, what the hell?" one of them says. "You were going to squirt this right at us," I reply. "We weren't," a girl replies. "Yes, you were," I reply deadpan. Ellie watches with a raised eyebrow. She seems less intimidated this time, more bemused. "Hey, we were just screwing around, man," says one of the boys. "Right," is my only reply. I let the word hang dead in the air, waiting until they continue their laughter and go about their way, and on with their conversations. But crucially, Ellie and I are able to go on with ours. And then when lunch comes to an end, I tell Ellie that I'll meet up with her in class and I take a little detour. I approach the bench that they're sitting on and raise the bottle up high, opening the lid and blasting a cold stream of vinegar into the backs of all their heads. I take off, laughing as they scream and squeal with distress. The hours of the day roll by. I push through my exhaustion, doing my best to brush away Ellie's concern when she comments on it. I just smile at her and hope that the dark circles beneath my eyes are at the least somewhat aesthetic. The orange-yellow glow of the sun filters in through the classroom windows. It catches in her hair as she brushes it behind her ear, and it glints with a watery shine in the pools of her eyes. The sound of the general muttering and murmuring of our classmates is a faint but steady backing melody from all around, accompanied by the occasional scrape of a chair and the scribbling of pens on paper. No one but me notices as the orange-yellow light is lost beneath sudden shadow, as an arctic breeze blows in from the only open window, as the blinds are thrown back from the glass, and the enormous, spectral eel from beyond the plane drifts hungrily past. Closer than ever before, I hear it rumble. It shakes the desks and rattles the wall as it swims impossibly by, black-gray and slick, terrible in its pursuit. I do my best not to react as its hiss shivers through the shade. I try to still the fear that has plagued me since the beginning. I try to block the monster from my mind's eye. The clock on the wall of the classroom ticks, and after a shiver, the light returns. When English comes around, I volunteer to speak in Ellie's place. I offer to read aloud the passage of Romeo and Juliet before the teacher can call upon her. And hey, I do flub some of the harder sentences, but I do a pretty good job. To be honest, I think that most of the kids in class were relieved to some degree or another that they didn't have to suffer through the anxiety of being picked on either. The day, as it always eventually does, is drawing to a close. 2:57 p.m. The teacher lets us out early and we walk, Ellie and I, side by side down the length of the corridors as the bustle and clamor filters out through the doors around us. Each footstep feels heavy. The sound of the clocks grow louder and louder with each tick of the hands, and each blink feels heavier and heavier on my eyes. "Hey," Ellie says to me as we leave the day behind us, as our imprints drift and dance from place to place in the building's memories. I was wondering, do you have a Snapchat or anything? Sure, I reply, reaching for my phone, but of course it isn't there, and I cannot for the life of me remember my username. I apologize and I tell her this. She shrugs and brushes a strand of hair behind her ear. That's no worry, here's mine. She reaches into her bag for her purple journal and tears off a corner of a page, scribbling her username down onto the paper before handing it to me. Or you could just give it to me tomorrow if you want. I shift. I'm not quite sure if it's my imagination, but I swear that I can hear the steady repetitive beat of a drum in the distance, over and over in time to the ticking of the clocks. Ellie, the thing is, I say as we pass through the lobby and out the doors into the brisk, cool air beyond. I don't think that I'm going to be here tomorrow. In fact, I definitely won't be. I'm just passing through. She stops and turns to look at me. Oh, she says, that's right. There's a pause. You know, I never did ask you. What's the reason for that? Why would a kid like you just show up to a school for a single day and then just disappear? I smile at her, but I fear that it doesn't quite reach my eyes. The light of the steadily lowering sun shines bright on her face. It's like I'm seeing her in high definition as the breeze gently rustles her hair. She adjusts her bag and cocks her head at me. The clock ticks. Ellie, I have to go now. I say simply, trying to keep the emotion in my voice to a minimum. Can she feel it? Can she feel the intensity and the importance of this moment? You have to go now, she laughs. So dramatic. She knocks me on the shoulder and after an intimate hesitation, she passes me by and sets off down the road and steadily away from the school. I don't know what I'm going to do without you though, she calls back over her shoulder. A joke, sure, but its depth does not go unnoticed. You only met me today, I call to her as the wind blows, ruffling my hair and rustling the collar of my coat. Who knows who you'll meet tomorrow? The air thickens all around and the lowering sun glints orange. It sends Ellie's shadow long and dark back towards me as the gap between us widens, but it illuminates her silhouette, a bright outline of shimmering golden light. I take a difficult step forwards, and I am for the last time falling through the mist and swirling crystalline fogs. The wind rushes past my face and ears and the gale is loud as I breathe in a blast of icy, wintry air. Tears run from my eyes against my will, and I stumble through the surface of the mirror and into the familiar deserted classroom with a crash. And when I find the strength to look up, it truly is deserted this time, dark and empty. There is no one else here. There is no Ellie. I wipe a sleeve across my eyes. The shape and size of the place has returned to its original metrics, and the lights I don't fail to notice are all off. No yellow light filters in through the glass of the classroom door from the corridor. The pictures and the paintings on the wall no longer appear frightening or in any way threatening, and while my heart beats fast, there do not appear to be any great monsters drifting through the snowstorm outside. Ellie? I murmur, but there is no response. She's gone. And you know, I think it might just be time that I left as well. And so I take my grandfather's watch from its place on the desk and hastily attach it around my wrist, pushing out through the door and walking steadily through the cold shadows and down the stairs, through corridor after corridor until I have returned to the lobby. I pass by the emblem of the school emblazoned on the wall. Ad Malora ad Elusam. I'll research it when I get home. I'll find out where this place is exactly, and the coordinates if I have to just in case. I reach into my pocket for Ellie's note, the one that she tore from her purple journal, but it's not there. To my frustration, I find that that too is gone. I struggle with an emotion that I find difficult to describe. Was I successful? Was I enough? Did I save her? Did I save Ellie? Or was I too late? I hesitate at the entrance to the school. I turn and take one last long look around the lobby. One final check. Waiting and hoping that Ellie might appear to me one last time. To let me know that she's okay. To say goodbye at the least. But she does not appear and nothing happens. The wind whistles beyond the doors, and so I take my leave. I push on out into the cold as my hair is blown back from my head, and I stride out into the snow and the haze, trudging through it and back to the road, following the familiar glow of the street lamps, continuing my way and pushing ever forward. I see her face in my mind's eye. I hear her voice in my head. I have to get home now, I think to myself, before I collapse from exhaustion into the snow. My parents are probably worried sick after all. I don't even know how long I've been lost. I raise my watch to my face and squint through the snow. It catches in the orange glint of the street lamps, and it ticks. I pause for a second beneath the overhead glow, and I watch as the intricate hands of my grandfather's then brother's watch go surely and steadily around. Dutifully around the face of the watch they go, ticking on and on as they were always supposed to. Huh, I murmur aloud as I set off into the storm. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The start of the new year always comes with pressure to reinvent yourself, to become a new you. But maybe 2026 isn't about adding more to your life. Maybe it's about letting go of what's been weighing you down. We all carry things that take up space in our minds. Old stress, unresolved thoughts, patterns we don't even realize are holding us back. Feeling lighter doesn't mean doing more. Sometimes it means carrying less. And that's where therapy can help. Therapy is a way to step back and get an unbiased perspective on what's been heavy, so you can decide what's worth keeping and what you're ready to leave behind. It can help shine a light on things that quietly drain your energy and make space for what actually matters moving forward. BetterHelp makes it easy to get started. They work with fully licensed therapists in the US, and they do the matching for you based on your needs and preferences. And if your first match doesn't feel right, you can switch to another therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 5 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is one of the largest online therapy platforms, and it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for live sessions based on over 1.7 million client reviews. You can't step into a lighter version of yourself without leaving behind what's been weighing you down. A therapy can help you clear space. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/MrCreeps. That's betterhelp.com/MrCreeps. Over the last week, I know you've all been scared. If you're a teenager reading this, 13 to 18, I'm not writing this to scare you more. I want to tell you the truth. The televised press conference we all just watched terrified me, but I'm here to tell you the experts are afraid of telling you the truth. This isn't intentional. They're just as scared as we are. They're terrified. Not knowing what this thing is or how to stop it terrifies me. But this sickness affecting the teenage population is not new. It infected my town this time last year, and it took my brother. Those who do know what it is tried to burn us to the ground to stop it from spreading. I spent half a year in a facility in their attempt to extract whatever this is from my veins. Cruel procedures drilling into me and testing my bone marrow. But it's already around you. It's in the air, melded into your brains. It's November 28th, so you're already feeling it. It's not like fomites, anything you can catch. It's deeper than that. I don't think that I can describe just how this thing spreads without sounding out of my mind. This thing is going to spread. You've seen it on the news, right? It's contagious, except not in the way you think. But it's not going to kill you. Kill you permanently anyway. If I'm honest, I wish it did kill us. I wish it killed me. OC, California was what my younger self had called a sunshine state. Our little town just on the edge of the coast was paradise. Aside from winter weather and the occasional freak storm, I had grown up in the sun. I had known the beach my whole life, the soft sand underfoot and between my toes, the shallows that I waded into every morning without fail, trailing after my older brother and his friends, chasing the surf under a shallow pink streaked across the sky. I knew salt and sweat, Ray-Bans perched on my head, the grossness of sunscreen gluing my hair to my neck, the memories of sandcastles and the relentless yet beautiful scorch of the sun on my skin, the heat clashing with the coolness of the sea as I dipped under, waiting for that one wave that would toss me into the air, sending me spiraling with the ocean itself before tumbling me back down into the depths. The surf that eventually carried me back to the shallows and spit me out to where Mom waited with ice cream, always ready to lather me in Factor 50. Presently, I bit back a hiss when my school bus took yet another sharp turn, jerking my head into the window. I was slowly starting to regret my decision to come on this stupid school retreat. Why was it snowing? Leaning my head against the ice-cold glass, I could only stare outside, confusion and slight panic prickling up and down my spine. In the seat in front of me, Sarah Lakewood had sneezed again, a violent and wet-sounding sneeze, and she refused to cover up her damn mouth. I was used to snow sometimes, like maybe a sprinkle or even just a few inches if we're lucky. In OC, California today on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023, sunny with a high of 75 and a low of 61. That's what Alexa had said. Sunny with cloudier conditions as we move into the afternoon. Pressing my face into the glass, I squinted through spiraling snowflakes that seemed abnormally large and thicker, already obstructing my view. I wouldn't exactly call this cloudy conditions. This was freak weather, the type that I would expect to be on the national news or fear-mongering TikTok pages. I tried my phone again, still no signal. I did get one single bar when the bus stopped, and we got stuck in a snowdrift. I still wasn't sure how we were still alive, let alone why this driver kept going, but it was gone before I could try Mom's phone. There was barely any visibility outside, and I was having a hard time believing in our driver when he assured us that everything was going to be fine. That slight shudder in his tone wasn't helping. This guy had no idea what the hell he was talking about. The blanket of snow outside shouldn't have freaked me out as much as it did, but staring out into it, what would normally be golden landscape and endless ocean, I only saw white. With my cheek uncomfortably pressed against the pane, I wrapped my jacket tighter around myself, surprised by my breath dancing in front of me in sharp wisps. I shouldn't have been shocked that the school couldn't afford heating on the bus. We were a tiny town and most of our funding went into our sports department. However, the least that they could do was supply half a dozen kids who weren't used to this type of weather. This deep-rooted cold sliding into every bone in my body with heat packs. I wasn't dressed for Arctic conditions. That morning, I was pretty sure my wardrobe would only be a light sweater and jeans. California weather could be spotty at times, but it was always a guarantee that we were never going to get a literal snowstorm. Still, if I really strained my ears, I could maybe trick myself into believing that the blizzard outside was in fact ocean waves crashing against the shore, where I once felt safe. Summer. The familiar voice barely registered. I ignored it, curling into my seat and willing my body to stop shaking. I know you're ignoring me. I kept my focus on the snow piling up on the windows. The sheer amount that had fallen in just under an hour was almost impossible. I could already sense my classmates' chatter shift from TikTok and Twitch streamers to what the hell is going on outside. I was also unlucky enough to get seated in front of Wes Cameron. I had to bite back a hiss when he kicked my seat yet again in an attempt to balance on his seat to get a perfect shot of the storm. He was acting like he had never seen snow before, jabbering to his seatmate who was currently my other least favorite person on this bus. Summer. That annoying voice had turned into a sing-song. Go away. I mimicked his taunt. I'm trying to sleep. You don't look asleep. I shifted in my seat, trying to get comfortable. Keyword, trying. Mom says you're not spending the holidays with us. So? I didn't turn around. That's not very festive of you, sis. When I didn't respond, he sighed. Oh, so you're gonna ruin Christmas for everyone. Ouch, geez man, you didn't have to do her like that. I wasn't expecting Wes to chime in, poking his head through the gap in my seat. He shot me a grin and I shoved him away with a finger poke to the forehead. Ow! I wasn't sure what had made me snap. Wes Cameron trying to squeeze his head through the very small gap in my seat, or the idea that my brother still believed in the magic of Christmas when he treated the holidays like spring break. He wasn't even conscious for the special day a year prior, passed out on the beach after his holiday party went sideways. Since Mom was too embarrassed to acknowledge Wes's behavior or admit it to our neighbors, I was the one running to and from our house with a barf bucket and fresh cans of soda when everybody else was tucking into their Christmas dinners. Ah yes, the festive cheer of cleaning up your brother's puke. Dislodging myself from the window, I lifted my head to find the golden child himself looming over me, arms crossed, eyebrows raised, mimicking our mother. He was wearing a reindeer sweater which was already a flashing red flag. The light-up antlers sticking out made me feel nauseous. The sweater was too big for him, baggy and hanging off of his slim frame. Definitely an attempt to get on Mom's good side. His bobble hat was a choice. Mom was obsessed with holiday-themed clothing. Fallon or Fall, since apparently our parents were comedic geniuses with names, was exactly 1 year older than me. And despite his growing list of almost felonies, according to Mom, still the golden child. While I was the kid that she avoided talking about during family gatherings, the socially awkward one who was just going through a phase. Mom named us after the seasons that we were born under. While I was born in July, summer months, long days, and an increasingly painful pregnancy. Thanks for the TMI, Mom. Fallon was born in the fall under cozy red skies and fallen leaves. My brother was the literal golden child, but I didn't blame her for giving up on me. Unlike my brother, who actually had a life, I had ditched surfing and the beach when I found my individuality, choosing to stay at home all day playing Stardew Valley. I didn't abandon the outside completely, but I did stop trapezing after my brother and his friends, finding comfort in my own room. The last time that I hung out with my brother, Fallon left to get takeout pizza. I wanted to go with him, but he was crushing on a guy, and apparently having his little sister third-wheeling was social death. I made the mistake of heading back to my brother's friends, who were complaining of my presence. They didn't want a 14-year-old kid hanging out with them, and I guess they were too polite to tell my brother. So I distanced myself. That was until I was forced to acknowledge his existence on this stupid field trip. Since his friends were joining us for the entire holiday, Mom insisting on this huge party bringing all our families together. My brother's friends were also invited. Hence, I was planning on spending my holidays elsewhere. My plan was to ignore Fallon's existence and once the field trip was over, jump on a flight. However, the universe had other plans. It was pretty hard to ignore him when he was clinging to my seat, our janky bus rocking him side to side. Fallon and I were like carbon copies of our mother and father. While I had inherited Mom's brunette curls and darker complexion, Fallon was a pale redhead. You could see the resemblance if you squinted. It was mostly in our eyes and the shape of our faces. According to somebody in class, we had the exact same resting face. The same one that he was pulling at that moment, eyebrow cocked, lips pricked into a slight smile. I quickly decided that I hated his stupid reindeer sweater, another ploy to get on Mom's good side. Fallon loved family interventions, especially when he was the one holding them. I decided to humor him, trying to ignore our growing audience. I'm not interested in playing happy families. I spoke through what I hoped was a gritted smile. I could already feel my cheeks growing warm, and it wasn't even a relief. It was uncomfortable warm, like sticking your head into an oven. Can we talk about this later? Mom told me to talk to you. It was always, Mom says with him. Geez, it was like talking to a toddler. I have nothing to say, I said. It's only 2 weeks. You can survive without me, Fallon. Fallon folded his arms. So where are you going? Florida, I said. I have friends that I'm staying with. I hated the way that he smirked, like what I was saying couldn't be true. Friends? I met them on a Discord server. He curled his lip, yet another momism. You're 15. I rolled my eyes. They're my age, Fallon. When the bus jerked again, this time setting off a cacophony of cries behind us, my brother was oddly calm, tightening his grip on my seat. Okay, well, his voice wobbled when he was violently thrown backwards, only just managing to keep his balance. Can you at least let me drive you? Fallon Cartwright, our driver shouted, tackling the wheel, snow pounding down on the windshield. Please sit down. Fallon shot me a look, his eyes widening. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Since when did a random bus driver know my brother's name? I think I was about to question it, amused and maybe a little panicked. Maybe this guy knew our mother. She was a well-known name in the town after all. I remember reaching out and grabbing his arm, wrapping my hand around his wrist and tugging him into the seat next to me. But in the corner of my eye, the driver exploded. I don't mean that he burst into meaty chunks. I mean 1 minute he was there, frantically trying to brush snow from the windscreen with his bare hand, sticking his head out of the window, and in a single disorienting moment, pop, and he was gone, exploding into a vivid red mist. Summer? Fallon's voice was barely scratching the surface of my mind when I was staring at what almost reminded me of stardust, a crimson tide of red sparkles suspended in the air, lightly coating the driver's seat. It took me half a second to realize that somehow this man had just spontaneously combusted, and it slowly began to dawn on me that nobody was driving the bus. The world turned mute. Voices were ocean waves slamming into my skull. Outside, I could just make out the jagged edge of a cliff that we were careening towards, the bus swerving again and sending my classmates into a fresh panic. In that moment, I wanted to be the hero, jumping forward to grab the wheel myself and steer us from the cliff face that we were teetering on the edge of. But I could only sit there paralyzed and dazed, watching the road get narrower and narrower. It reminded me of going through the tunnel in that old Willy Wonka movie. No light, no hope, just darkness slowly enveloping us. I never felt the bus tip over the edge. Initially, it was a single sharp jerk that slammed my head into the window. I should have felt the lurch, the weightlessness as I was hurled forward and propelled off my feet, and the crushing force of 50,000 megatons of steel obliterating my internal organs. I remember screams erupting and something wet hitting me in the face, followed by a blinding white light that grew brighter and brighter and brighter. When I think back, it felt like living in a movie, except the movie was ending in one vivid, fiery explosion so powerful that I was yanked from my body. I should have felt my death, but whatever death was, it spat me back out. I remember distantly thinking that it must not have liked the taste. I awoke to wails and sobs and my body lodged between two seats. I couldn't feel my legs, I couldn't feel anything. Only a growing numbing sensation severing my nerve endings. I didn't realize that my mouth was already open in a silent scream, and that I was choking up blood. When I managed to open my eyes and keep them open, something was looming over me, swaying back and forth, back and forth. It was like a pendulum, hypnotizing me and lulling me to sleep, my eyes focusing and blurring, black spots growing big and small, big and small. Summer! Somebody was shaking me, prodding my face. I felt their fingers try and find a pulse in my neck and wrist, but I still couldn't feel my legs. I sensed someone's breath in my face, unusually warm, dancing across my cheeks. When they coughed, I assumed fumes, but I wasn't expecting something warm and wet to coat my face. Shit. The voice suddenly had an identity, my muddled brain briefly finding clarity. Summer, stay with me, all right? Wes Cameron knelt in front of me, slapping my face, trying to keep me awake. And when I did open my eyes, I ignored his frantic gaze and blood-speckled lips, focusing on the weird swinging object dancing above his head. It was too big to be a backpack, flickering in and out of view. I could see the twisted, mangled skeleton of our boss wrapped around me, crushing my chest in a suffocating embrace. I've got you. Wes's cry was labored with sobs. I could feel his hands on me, another disorienting wave of dizziness, and then, I did it. His sharp breath barely grazed my ears before I could feel the numbing cold underneath me, blood pooling around the wreckage. Wes didn't hesitate, wrapping me into an awkward hug and violently wrenching me from where I was wedged between what was left of the crumpled seats and the window. Lying on my back, I saw the carnage from a different angle. I followed the intense red smear. It was so cold and there was so much pain coming in sharp pulses rattling my body. But I could feel my legs. They were intact, folded underneath me. Wes gently pulled me into a sitting position. Blood ran from my nose, my mouth, my ears, choking me. But I was alive. When my gaze found the swinging shape looming over me, it hit me that I wasn't looking at an object lit up by the bus emergency lights. I was staring at what was left of a bright green holiday sweater, illuminated antlers illuminating a reindeer nose that was now soaked in red. Delusional, I remembered that it hadn't been Rudolph before. I only saw the torso and that was enough. It didn't fully register that it was my brother's corpse swinging back and forth until someone, Wes, grabbed my shoulders and forced me to look at him. Fallon was dead. I wasn't sure what grieving was yet or even how you were supposed to react to a death. But in that intimate moment where it was just me and my tumultuous thoughts, that poisonous and selfish part of me could only think of one single word. Finally, and then it well and truly hit me. Fallon was dead. Fallon wasn't coming back. Sound came in and out like whooshes of air. Wes's lips were moving, but all I could hear was my frenzied heartbeat. Before, whoosh. Hey! Wes's voice was loud and invasive. Look at me. I didn't look at him. I looked at my brother, his corpse. Somebody was screaming and it wouldn't stop. Distantly, I realized that it was me. I was screaming. The noise was horrifying, a shrill screech exploding in my skull. "Summer, we need to get you out of here." Wes's heavy breathing hit my face. Warm arms were already wrapping around me, pulling me like a doll out of the wreckage and straight into these swirling snowflakes. It was still snowing. The thought felt muddled and wrong as I sat on my knees, shivering and numb, at a loss for words. Around me was a cacophony of my screaming classmates, some missing limbs, others barely alive and pleading for death. Fallon was still in there, my thoughts screamed. I didn't see a head. I didn't see his full body, so maybe I was already on my knees and crawling through blanketed white, before another pair of arms held me back. I didn't know her name, Poppy or Holly or something like that. The girl dropped down in front of me, her eyes wide and unseeing. She had been on the track team. I vaguely remembered her from our yearbook, always at the front of every photo, always smiling. Her blonde ponytail swinging in doll-like smile, perpetually picture-perfect. But now her blonde hair hung in scarlet, tangled rat tails glued to her face. "Did you see it?" The girl's words caught me off guard, sending me shuffling back. The bus driver exploding into red mist. She saw it too. When she came closer, so close that her breath prickled my face, I noticed blood seeping from her lips and dribbling down her chin. The girl coughed, and I found myself with a face full of bloody mucus. She was ill. She wasn't just shivering from the cold. If her feverish skin and bloodshot eyes were any indication, I didn't respond. She slowly got to her feet, swaying from side to side as she stumbled away, muttering to herself. Holly coughed again, this time covering her mouth, and then stared down at her blood-streaked palm, her lip wobbling. Holly was sick, I thought, dizzily. In a daze, I think that I batted her bloody snot from my cheeks, but I don't think that I cared. I sat there for a long time waiting for Fallon to appear from the wreckage. Wes finally dropped down in front of me and grabbing my hands. I hadn't fully taken in his injuries until that moment, noticing the scary-looking gash slicing through his forehead, his thick brown curls hanging in half-lidded eyes. He was mostly intact, but each of his words accompanied a violent cough, his chest wheezing. Oh, the thought was like a wave crashing into me. Wes was sick too. His lips parted and then moved, shaping into what I could only guess was sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Summer." But I couldn't hear him this time. Instead, I was wondering why his hands were so warm, slick and sweaty, tangled with mine, while I was ice cold. I found my voice when I was able to stand, breathing into my hands to stay warm. "You don't look so good," I told him, and to my surprise, he laughed. And then he coughed, this time into his hands, and then wiping them on his jacket. "Neither do you." There were approximately 9 survivors out of 20 kids on our bus. The majority of our class were dead, but that fact had yet to sink in. I was still looking for familiar faces among the shadows of the survivors. It quickly became apparent that we were on our own. There was no signal, and when we did manage to find a single bar, 911 was disconnected. Kids started to panic, but I just kept telling myself that it was because of the weather. This snow was unprecedented, not what our town was used to. So of course our emergency lines would be busy. Elizabeth Banks, however, made sure to keep reminding me that the emergency lines were not busy. They were dead. Wes took over as our leader, announcing that we weren't that far away from home. And he was right. Even with the snow, I could still make out where our bus had toppled down a shallow embankment. So gathering as many resources as possible, we started the hike back to town while doing our best to haul the injured on makeshift stretchers. I was lucky to be able to walk, driven by pure adrenaline. I dreaded seeing my mother and explaining that Fallon wasn't coming back. Somehow, she would make it all my fault. I was already rehearsing the words in my head. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry that I couldn't save him." There was no right way to tell my mother that her son was never coming back. And yet again, that selfish part of me didn't want to. Why was it my responsibility? Why was I trying to apologize? Wes's initial idea was to hitchhike back to town, but when we got back onto the main road, we realized that that wasn't going to happen. Traffic had simply stopped, cars crashing into each other and jamming the road. It's because of the snow, I told myself. Wes and two other guys were already checking each car, their faces growing progressively paler. We could have blamed it on the treacherous conditions. In fact, we tried to at first. Our town had never experienced a snow like this, the type that grounds entire cities to a halt and freezes people in cars. I was knee-deep in snowdrifts, wading towards a flipped-over Ranger, when Dom Hudson voiced my thoughts. "Where is everyone?" He spoke up, cutting through that unnerving silence and voicing what none of us wanted to acknowledge. I poked my head into each car and found exactly the same thing. The seat belts were still in place. Wes was already losing his cool, his voice breaking. "Hey, we're okay," he announced, his tone saying the opposite. "It's probably because of the storm. I'm sure everyone's evacuated." He didn't have to voice his conclusion after checking each car in the vicinity, because we all knew it. None of these drivers had left their seats. It wasn't until I stuck my head in a fancy Prius that the magnitude of the situation truly hit me. Just like with our bus driver, I found myself staring at sparkling red mist splattering the steering wheel. Wes had an answer, or at least what he thought was one. He was trying to find logic in science, when I was pretty sure that we were looking at spontaneous human combustion on a catastrophic scale. I had no idea just how widespread it was until we had reached home in the early hours of the morning. I couldn't tell what time. It was still snowing out, and by then we were up to our knees in it. The whole town had come to a grinding halt. I went straight home in a panic that turned to dread at the sight of our wide-open front door. Alexa cheerfully greeted me with a, "Welcome home. The time is 3 a.m. on Thursday, November 23rd, and the temperature is currently 15 degrees Fahrenheit, with a real feel of 7 degrees Fahrenheit." Water was running upstairs. When I stumbled up to the landing, I stepped straight into suds flooding the bathroom. I turned off the faucet, my hands shaking. Mom was running a bath. I could see exactly what she was doing and what was left behind. The TV was still switched on to the Weather Channel, her laptop open on the coffee table, our school's website on display. Her phone was on the floor, the screen shattered, but I saw my name between the cracks. Summer. She tried to call me 54 times. Hesitantly, I followed the trail, backtracking into the main hallway where a glass of wine lay shattered on the floor. Dropping to my knees, I dragged my fingers across the carpet. The same red smear clung to each fiber. I didn't want to admit that the scarlet smudge on our hallway carpet was my mother and not her wine, or that before she had exploded, she had been so desperately trying to contact me. Going into shock again, I did everything that I could to distract myself. I checked the refrigerator and the pantry, taking note of every item. We still had no power, and so I grabbed my mom's phone and tried once again to reach an emergency line. I washed my face once, twice, 3 times, 4, scrubbing at it until my skin was raw. I felt like I was caked in him. When I pulled out my ponytail, I could feel him stuck in my hair and glued to my neck. Fallon was dead, Mom was dead. I spent hours in the shower, hours that I don't even remember, sitting with my knees to my chest, trying to imagine if I had only pulled Fallon into a seat sooner, He would be with me trying to calm me down. The logic in this horrible mess, the survivor's guilt, was eating me alive. I was alone. Still, though, I found comfort in my usual bedtime routine, trying to ignore the excited screaming from outside. Younger kids were running in the snow way past their bedtime, happy or hysterical, and still not fully registering that their parents were dead. Hours passed by and I was already expecting my mother to come yell at me for not being asleep, or placing warm milk with honey by my bedside. But I was alone inside a freezing cold house that was no longer home. I started to break apart. I tried and failed to sleep in my room. It was supposed to be my safe place, but it felt simultaneously too big and like the walls were closing in. I tried Fallon's and I couldn't even step over the threshold. Everything was still exactly where he had left it, like he was coming back. I hadn't been in his room for a while and he had revamped it. Fallon's personality was lit up in every Marvel movie poster, and his surfboards hanging from the walls. His bedroom didn't make sense against the backdrop of the storm outside. Heavy, blanketed white clashing with his beaded curtains and multicolored beach towels. I could see unfinished college applications on his desk, his laptop still open, frozen on the Minecraft menu screen. Before the field trip, he had stuck his head through my door. "Yo, do you want to hang out? I'm setting up Minecraft right now." I ignored him, corking in my headphones. I never told him about his friends because I didn't want to mess up our relationship, but I had messed it up and I pushed him away. Closing my brother's door, I went back to the dark red stain on the hallway carpet. I don't even remember curling up and passing out right there. When I woke up, it was daylight and it was still snowing. I was almost snowed in, stepping straight into untouched white. I was trying to make coffee when there were 3 singular knocks on the door. Wes, still in his pajamas and carrying a bag full of Dunkin' Donuts. "You want one? They're fresh from yesterday, so I'm handing them out." He thrusted the bag in my face, his mouth full, chocolate dribbling down his chin. I noticed significant perspiration glistening on his forehead, soaking strands of hair glued to his skin. His eyes were bigger somehow. The proportions of his face were different. I had to be hallucinating or maybe concussed. But no, when I blinked rapidly, the boy's face was somehow narrower. He was either delirious from his fever or was slowly splintering apart mentally. When I hesitantly took a rainbow-sprinkled donut, his smile started to falter. He was trembling, barely able to keep himself upright. "There's a meeting in the school auditorium." He smiled, handing me a caramel donut too. "Starts at 12, don't be late, all right?" I swallowed down donut barf. "Meeting?" He nodded. "Yep, there are around 200 of us, 13 to 18 years old. Whatever this thing is, it's sparing teenagers." He shrugged. "Well, that's our hypothesis anyway. Everybody over the age of 18 and under the age of 13 have." Wes mimed an explosion with his hands, his eyes growing manic. "Bye-bye." His words felt like knives pricking into my back. "Everyone?" I managed to spit out. "Yep, everyone." His expression darkened and I started to see the splinters in his mask, his lips curling. I found my parents reduced to red sludge, and my baby sister was her own flavor of strawberry shake in her crib. Wes's eyes widened and he startled me with a choked laugh. "Wait," he ran his hands through his hair. "Do you think that's what this is? What if it's aliens turning us into milkshakes?" Wes laughed, holding out his palm, slick with red. "So that's what it is, right, my little sis? She just turned into Nesquik Man." I wonder if his fever was doing all of the heavy lifting. He was speaking in tongues. "You're sick," I said, laying my hand on his forehead. I had to pull it back, biting down on a hiss. He was burning up. Like literally I could barely touch him. When I tried brushing soaking strands of his hair out of his eyes, he wafted my hand away. "I'm not sick," Wes mumbled. "It's from the crash." I took a slow step back, suddenly very aware of him being contagious. "You're burning up." "I'm fine." He rolled his eyes, but then he coughed, which surprised even him, a startled, choked splutter sending him stumbling off balance. I pretended not to see the slew of red seeping down his chin. He inclined his head and I caught something in the slither of his iris. Wes had brown eyes. I knew that because I had a silent crush on him all the way through my freshman year, before he had started dating Tommy Fields. I used to get lost in his eyes, warm coffee grounds with flecks of orange. But right then, I couldn't ignore the unmistakable green streak bleeding into his iris. "It's just a cold, dude." He spread out his arms, doing a clumsy twirl. "What do you expect? It's snowing. We're all gonna be a little sniffly." To demonstrate, he swiped his nose, pretending not to see the scarlet smear. Oh God, maybe I'm the one turning into strawberry Nesquik. Wes giggled and his laugh turned into a cough, this time into his hands. He held up the bag of donuts, offering me a two-fingered salute. "I'll be..." Another spluttered cough choked his words, his chest heaving. "Fine." I thought that Wes was going to collapse when he swayed left and then right, his eyes flashing, before Wes seemed to catch a hold of himself, finding balance. He pivoted on his heel and waded back down my driveway, struggling through growing snowdrifts. "See you at 12, Summer." I didn't end up going to the meeting after the snow officially locked me inside, but thanks to a mass text sent to our parents' phones, I was informed that we were a group of 200 kids, ages 13 to 18, and we were well and truly alone. According to several senior kids, our town was cut off from the rest of the world by the freak weather. I checked the news and somehow there was nobody talking about it. The huge snowstorm that had hit a small Californian town. There was nothing. Instead, the rest of the world was gearing up for the holidays. It almost felt like we had been yeeted from reality itself. The internet was acting weird. I could see what was happening, but I couldn't post anything. When I flicked through TV channels, they were always the same ones. The text message also detailed that, starting that afternoon, we had to report to the school auditorium for daily crisis meetings. Like every other kid in town, I was numb from losing my family, and life itself crumbling around me in a single afternoon. And yet the underdeveloped part of my brain still wanted to take advantage of zero adult authority. Retail therapy it was, so I went shopping. I forced myself through towering snowdrifts, lugging a wheelbarrow with me, and I stocked up on rum and soda, all the fresh goods that were still there, and of course, candy. The rest of the store had been stripped away of every branded soda and candy that you could think of, an army of 13-year-olds leading the charge. I was supposed to attend the crisis meeting, but in my head, what was the point? We were all going to die anyway, so what was the point of trying? And so I went home and I slept away 12 days. I didn't eat or shower, and the fresh food that I had dumped on my bedroom floor was starting to smell. Day 1, I slept for most of it, only getting up to down a bottle of water. Day 2, I was barely conscious, only half aware of the lights flickering out. Day 3, loud banging woke me up and I dragged myself downstairs, opening the door to 2 boys. I vaguely knew them. Henry Mara and Dalton Atlas. The two of them were shivering, and when I peeked past them, the snow had let up slightly. A Freddie Fauner and his group of freshman freaks took over our house. Henry held up a bag of apples. I think he was offering them as a gift. "Do you mind if we stay here for a while?" His hopeful expression and frostbite lowered my barriers. I nodded and let them in, offering them blankets and letting them have the living room. I went back to bed, crashing onto my pillows, the world tilting. Day 4. Henry and Dalton were arguing over cereal. I ignored them and I went back to sleep. Day 5. My mom's phone woke me up at 5 a.m. "Wes Cameron is dead." The words heeded my notifications. His body was found inside a pharmacy. Something ice cold slipped through me. Wes had a cold, right? I sat up in bed, suddenly very conscious of the dryness in my throat. I remembered that slither of green creeping into his iris, his clammy forehead. Day 6. I was woken up by another text. This time, 10 15-year-olds were found dead in their homes, all suspected of the flu. And Day 7. Henry started coughing downstairs. I jumped out of bed and I taped my door shut. I opened my window and I took 3 Tylenol. Another text vibrated my phone. 3 more 15-year-olds are dead. Day 8. I couldn't get out of bed. My bones felt like lead. I coughed up something onto my pillow, but I didn't look at it. There were 3 texts on my phone. The first one was alerting us that they were going to stop reporting deaths. The second was that they felt sick. And the third was that they wanted their mommy. Day 9. I was burning, rolling around in sweat-soaked sheets with a mouthful of blood. Henry had stopped coughing. I could hear the boys moving around. I hallucinated my brother standing over me with abnormally pointy ears, a grin splitting his mouth wide. I felt his ice-cold fingers tiptoe across my clammy forehead, and when I looked at him, blinking rapidly, I could have sworn that his eyes were different. But he was beautiful, grotesquely beautiful like a fairy. Wes climbed through my window, followed by the girl from the crash, Holly. Day 10. I think I died. My body is no longer mine. Day 11. I was still dead at my bedroom floor, choking up wet, slithering red chunks. I couldn't speak or breathe or eat. My body was scorching and my screams strangling through my lips after bypassing my cooked vocal cords. Day 12. I could move again. Not well, but well enough to stand. My body felt strange, too light and yet also heavy, like I was both floating and dragging myself. Calling out for the boys, I headed downstairs, covering my mouth with a soiled pair of pajama pants, and stepping straight into the sticky red pooling across my mom's prized rug. Henry lay on his back, choking on bubbling scarlet dribbling down his chin. Dalton was vomiting in the sink, his trembling body convulsing, lumps of fleshy red splattered on the floor. Henry's face looked sharper, paler, his eyes sunken, ears pointier. I found myself choking down hysterical giggles that were choking me. Before the thought could graze my mind, my brain was suddenly on fire. I dropped to my knees, coughing, red filling my mouth. My limbs contorted and my head swimming, the sickly stench of peppermint seeping into my nose. Bells rang loud and invasive in my ears. A voice echoed through my skull. "Don't worry, children. The transformation is painful, but only if your body rejects it. Right now, your human tissue is converting to elf tissue. I know it hurts, but I lost quite a lot of my workforce this year, so I have no choice. The show must go on." He boomed. "Human children aren't quite ideal, but they should do the job. I need at least 500 of you to compete with this year's demand." He laughed and Henry collapsed, his head smacking on the edge of the sink. "I'm sure your parents will become fine meat scraps for my reindeer." I screamed, my body contorting, his words forcing me onto my side. I choked up what I was guessing was my internal organs. All I could think about was my brother. Did this thing work on the dead too? Wes, was he a failure or was dying just the start? When my body lurched onto its side and I choked up something wet and slimy, the floorboards creaked behind me. Henry and Dalton stood. They didn't speak. They just walked out of the door straight into a blizzard, stardust dripping from them. I waited for my body to twist just like theirs, but I kept bleeding all over myself, sticking my hair to my neck. My eyes flickered, Santa's laugh bouncing in my skull. I waited to die or at least become an elf, but I didn't. I still felt light and wrong, and when I looked in the mirror, my face was twisted out of shape, my ears too pointy and too sharp. I resemble Faye almost. When I was well enough, I left my house, finding a wasteland of snow and bodies, kids who had rejected the transformation. Santa had taken the others and left me. When the snow did start to melt, I had people in masks banging at my door. I let them throw me in an unmarked van and take me out of town. I spent the next several months being experimented on. The man who tested me said the experts had known about Santa's existence for a while, but they hadn't seen what they call a conversion on this scale. Dr. Mycroft, the man who prodded and poked me every day, told me the conversion is the process of human cells and tissue being forcibly transformed. The only way to stop it is to reject the idea of Santa Claus. So, that's what I want you all to do right now, before this thing spreads globally, please. Stop believing in my friends who forcibly became elves against their will. Wes, Holly, Dom, Henry, and Dalton, all the kids that he took away. Stop believing in the psychopath who murdered my parents. Stop believing in him. A loud honk sounded as the car in front of me came to a sudden stop. Something had dashed across the road. Something large. I slammed my foot down on the brakes and prayed the icy road wouldn't allow yet another fender bender. It was hard to make out any shapes through the thick veil of the blizzard's harrowing symphony, but I could tell that whatever had crossed the highway had done so with speed and precision. Maybe a moose, I had thought to myself, paying no further mind to the matter. I reclined into my seat and turned up the volume on the radio. Frank Sinatra's "I've Got You Under My Skin" filled the cozy insides of my SUV, and I felt my heart rate suddenly stabilize. It had been several hours since I had left my hometown, and now I was surrounded by an endless expanse of white as far as the eye could see. There should have been a forest on either side of the highway, but with these severely worsening weather conditions, it was impossible to make out anything further than 6 feet away. As I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel in perfect synchronization with the song, I grew more and more impatient. We had stood still for at least 5 minutes by now, Surely there couldn't be this much traffic all the way out here. The song was nearly over and we still hadn't moved. Behind me, I could hear a chorus of aggressive honking. There were at least 6 cars behind me as far as I could tell, probably 6 in front as well. Their headlights were the only indicator of their existence, as the snow had turned everything else invisible. And then a grisly thought spread like wildfire throughout the crevices of my mind. Had there been an accident? I sat up in my seat and made an attempt to somehow peek above the top of the car ahead of me. It was futile. What is going on? I murmured under my breath as a loud sigh escaped my body. The howling winds outside violently slammed into the exterior of the car, killing any notions that I may have had about stepping out and investigating. For now, it was best that I just waited it out. It would surely pass in a minute or so. I picked up my phone and started messing around with a few apps. I do not condone texting and driving, but considering that we hadn't been moving for a while, I would wager a short social media session couldn't hurt anyone. And besides, it didn't look like I was going anywhere anytime soon either. I even glanced over to the half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels that laid unassuming on the floorboard of the seat beside me, but I decided against it for now. Prior to this traffic jam, I had been visiting my extended family for the holidays back in my hometown. Due to reasons that we don't need to delve into, I was forced to leave earlier than I had initially expected, which was fine by me as I couldn't stand another second of chatty family drama and that awful holiday cheer. Forgive me if I'm sparse with the details, but for privacy's sake, I won't disclose the name of the town that I departed from, nor where I am currently headed. All you need to know is that the road that I was traveling on was located pretty far up in the northwestern region of the United States. It was absolutely freezing. Some time passed and the vehicles on the road hadn't moved an inch. It was as though they were rooted to the icy foundations below. Dauntingly, I observed as the car in front of me was in the process of getting devoured by the rapidly growing snowfall. Its tires were nearly completely engulfed, and I figured that it wouldn't be long until getting home in time to watch today's football game would be the least of my concerns. And then, growing in the distance, were sirens. I looked up from my phone and directed my gaze toward the side view mirror, and I saw a faint blinking blue light penetrate through the thicket of snow. The ambulance zoomed past me at breakneck speeds, and shortly after, a police car had followed. This only reaffirmed my belief that something terribly wrong had occurred. I scrolled through my phone and continued as usual, though my digital endeavors would prove to be quite fruitless. The longer that I used my phone, the worse the connection seemed to get. TikTok and YouTube videos began buffering, and other apps that required internet connectivity wouldn't even load. I'm by no means a physicist, tech guru, meteorologist, or whatever the appropriate title for this would be, but I surmised that the ongoing raging storm could be linked to the shortcomings of my phone signal. Incidentally, I was also in the middle of nowhere, 40 minutes away from the nearest settlement, and 3 hours away from the closest city. The remoteness of my location would surely also have an impact on my... A light tapping on my window caught me off guard and I jolted in my seat. Oh crap, I thought, as the sight of a bulky police officer greeted me on the other side of the glass. By the looks of it, he had been out in the storm for way too long. His cheeks were glowing pink, and he had snowflakes stuck in his burly mustache. I quickly stowed my phone in my pocket and rolled down the window, preparing to explain why I was on my phone in traffic. But the officer didn't care about any of that. "Good evening, sir," the officer started. "There's been an accident further up on the road. Right now we're trying to, Could you turn that down?" He gestured towards the radio. "Oh, sorry, officer, of course," I replied, dialing the scroll wheel of my volume button all the way down. "As I was saying, we're trying to evacuate this, whole area. Once I've gotten to the final car at the end behind you there, and I've gotten him to start backing up, I want you to follow him immediately." "You want me to drive in reverse?" I questioned. A quizzical grimace stretched across my face. "No, the road's too narrow right now. I don't see any other option. Unless you want to try turning around and risk ending up in one of these ditches here," the officer said with a slight smirk. But before I had the chance to say anything else, a thundering bang sounded a couple of yards in front of us. The winds carried the sound with ear-splitting accuracy. The officer reacted immediately, hovering his hand above the pistol in his holster. He took a few steps back and tried signaling in on his shoulder-mounted radio. Another bang echoed through the harsh wind, followed by another, and then another. The sounds were unmistakable. They were gunshots. He drew his pistol and rushed towards the source of the sounds. I watched as he slowly faded from view. A void of white had swallowed him whole. I stared in shock for a couple of minutes, expecting the officer to return any moment, but he never came. A small mass of snow had started accumulating inside my car, so I quickly rolled up my window. I could hear another set of muffled gunshots joining the already dominant ones. It sounded like they were completely emptying their magazines into whoever or whatever. And then in perfect unity, the sound stopped. The silence weighed heavy as I sat in anticipation. My mind was flustered with thoughts and ideas, but the prevalent feeling that occupied my body was a creeping sensation of dread. Just what the heck was going on? I anxiously tapped my fingers on the steering wheel. In a moment of weakness, I once again looked over to the liquor bottles on the floor. I hadn't gone this long without a drink in years. I mean, one sip wouldn't hurt, right? Just to calm my nerves. If I was discreet enough, the officers would have no way of knowing. Just as I leaned over to the passenger side to pick the bottle up, my vehicle violently trembled. Something powerful had slammed into my car. I cursed loudly and rose back up, abandoning the bottle. I frantically searched around, looking for any signs of the perpetrator. I scanned my rearview, the side window, and even the passenger side window. Nothing but a flurry of white snow. And then I noticed something in the blizzard in front of me. A black silhouette grew larger and larger, and soon I could make out what it was. A man, wait no, two men, and they were running towards my car. But these guys weren't police officers nor any of the paramedics that had arrived earlier. They must have been the denizens of the cars up front. And then two more people appeared behind them, either giving chase to or following the two men in front. As they inched closer, I could properly see the expressions carved into their faces. They were terrified. They looked as though they had seen a ghost. The first two men ran past my car. They didn't even look at me, and shortly after, the two people behind them had followed, a woman and a boy. They hurried across the ice at great speeds while at the same time exercising caution so as to not slip and fall. Before I had the chance to react, they were gone, having once again been consumed by the endless white void. This was definitely cause for concern. Who in their right mind would abandon the comforts of their vehicles all the way out here in this weather? The driver in front of me cautiously opened one of the doors of the car. A middle-aged white man with a beer gut stepped out into the cold. He slung his puffer jacket around his shoulders and stared off into the distance ahead. I watched him curiously, wondering if he too would start running, and then wondering whether I should join him if he indeed decided to. Right now it seemed illogical, but then again, these guys clearly knew something that I didn't. maybe there was a gas leak up ahead. Maybe some radioactive material had been improperly disposed of. My mind raced, looking for any logical explanations for my current predicament, but I found none. The man took a few steps forward, intently inspecting the blizzard ahead. It seemed as though something had caught his attention. He took another few steps forward, positioning himself in front of his car, partially obscuring my view of him, his left side still visible. But there was something else. In the deep recesses of the snowstorm, something was moving. I strained my eyes, leaning forward in my seat and staring through my snow-covered windshield. Approaching from the left side of the road onto the oncoming lane, a large silhouette bobbed up and down as it slowly advanced toward the man. Though it was far away, it looked to be near twice his height, but he hadn't noticed it. The man was far too busy examining whatever had caught his attention directly in front of him. An overwhelming sense of dread had filled my veins. The way the silhouette moved, I couldn't quite explain why, but it felt predatory. Like a lion stalking its prey through the thick underbrush of the African savanna, right before springing into action and securing itself a fresh meal. Was it a moose? It didn't look to be. I mean, the proportions were way off, and it almost looked to be bipedal. But I couldn't think of any other large animals out here that the silhouette could have belonged to. I doubted that this area had ever seen any polar bears, and even so, they possibly couldn't reach this size. I mean, could they? It was like my primal instinct screamed at me to do something. I felt my fight or flight start to kick in, but I managed to keep it under wraps. I was safe inside of my warm SUV. But the man, however, I had to warn him somehow. If I honked my horn, whatever was stalking him might have leaped into action right away. It was way too risky. Before I could think of anything, the man screamed in terror. Muffled through my car's thick exterior, his cries echoed. I focused ahead of me, trying to get a glimpse of what had riled him up so badly. He turned around in an attempt to flee. He had almost made it back to the driver's side door of his car when he had planted his face into the cold, hard ground. He must have slept. The predatory silhouette to his left was nowhere to be seen now. For a brief moment, I locked eyes with the man. A familiar look of excruciating fear contoured across his face. He dug his long and unkempt nails into the snow, slowly crawling forward, and then he screamed yet again. But this time, not out of fear, but in pain. Violently, he was dragged back. I watched in horror as the man tried to fight it, clutching the powdery snow as if it would have actually provided a stable grip. He was dragged in front of his car and out of my view. Just before he had rounded the left side of the corner, I could see his blood-covered hands desperately cling to the tire, and then he was pulled away. I was in complete disbelief. It was like a scene from a horror movie, except this was real. It was actually happening. The man's wailing abruptly ceased, and besides the harsh winds of the blizzard, no sound was made. I pulled out my phone and tried my best to shake the trembling in my hands as I dialed 911. As I waited for a response, I made sure all the doors were locked while I glued my eyes to the spot where I had last seen the man. A pair of long indentations scarred the snow where he had lay, and a crimson handprint stained the black rubber of the front tire. Come on, pick up already," I harshly muttered to my phone. But I never made it past the dialing tone. Was it because I had no service? I've heard that many emergency lines still operate in spite of a poor phone signal, but right now I was inclined to believe the contrary. I eventually gave up and put my phone down. I shrunk down into my seat, making myself as small as I could. I couldn't possibly tell you how long I sat there waiting like that. The concept of time felt irrelevant at that moment. In my reclined position, I still retained a decent line of sight to the outside world. There were no signs of movement, just an empty white canvas. I could hear no discernible sounds either. I watched in what felt like slow motion as each individually unique flake of snow had landed, and then proceeded to melt onto the glass. The windshield wipers fought the blizzard vigorously, brushing aside everything the malevolent storm had to offer. And then suddenly, with a squelched thud, something heavy crashed down on the window and the wipers were now smearing a viscous red liquid back and forth across the windshield. A nearly indescribable sense of paralyzing horror drilled into my very soul as I realized what I was looking at. I immediately recognized the sorrowed eyes and contorted expression of pain that draped across the poor man's face. Glistening red blood had completely dyed his hair, and the man's skin was full of lacerations and tears. But the true horror of this scene lay not with the frightful sight that greeted me no more than 12 inches away, separated only by a cracked glass screen. No. The true horror presented itself as I finally mustered up the courage to ponder the question that I'm not even sure I wanted the answer to. Where was the rest of him? Upon the revelation that I was gazing at a freshly decapitated human head, I was compelled to scream uncontrollably at the top of my lungs, and so I did. I couldn't help it. I felt nausea and on the verge of vomiting. It took all my strength to gather any fragment of composure that had not yet left my body, and I quickly sat up in my seat, frantically scanning my surroundings. Still, I saw nothing except a heavy downpour of snow. I tried to calm down as I knew that panicking would only worsen whatever situation was at hand. I steadied my breathing and sat still, slowly counting down from 10. However, the grotesque sight that greeted me whenever I looked through the windshield didn't exactly help. So I closed my eyes and continued counting, focusing on controlling my breathing. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. But even as I closed my eyes, I still saw his face. The gruesome image had burned itself deep into my mind, and I felt anxious at the thought that I may never sleep peacefully again. In my distracted haze, I failed to notice that something foreign had filled the air, something ominous. It was a deep sound, barely audible, a stark contrast to the roaring winds outside. It was the kind of sound you feel rather than hear, if that makes any sense. It was deep and bellowing, and I swear that I could feel my chest faintly vibrate, like when you're at a concert or a nightclub with a really loud bass. Carefully, I rolled down my window a quarter of the way in order to better hear the curious noise. It was much clearer now, and the best way to describe it would be to call it a sort of low-pitched rumble. Its tone fluctuated ever so slightly, as if a synchronization was short, rapid breaths. It would be a rather powerful display of vocal cords if the sound was an organic origin. I tried my best to pinpoint the direction from which the sound had emanated, but I found the task to be near impossible. It may have been the wind distorting and dislocating the sound, but it sounded like it had originated from every direction. I didn't know what to do. Obviously, I didn't want to exit the car and make a run for it like the previous motorists before me, but I felt that staying inside the car would only render me a sitting duck. I had no weapons to protect myself either, not even a pocket knife in the glove compartment. The only thing that I had was an old Zippo lighter, which I doubted would do any real damage in a fight. The deep rumbling subsided and was instead replaced by a hooting sound, reminiscent of that of an owl, only much deeper, like if someone blew air into a hollow tree trunk. But the sound was not easy to pinpoint, and I could discern that it was coming from behind the car in front of me, where I had last seen the man before his untimely demise. I fixed my gaze toward the source of the sound, expecting to see its owner peeking around the edges of the vehicle at any moment, when I suddenly heard another, identical set of deep hooting coming from my left side. I wondered how the animal or creature or whatever it was that made those sounds it somehow managed to sneak past my line of sight and position itself to my left without me noticing. But my wondering was cut short when the original set of hoots in front once again started bellowing through the winter air, as if in response to the other ones. And to my utter dismay, I slowly began to realize that whatever was making those sounds, whatever had killed that man, was not alone out here. And that's when I first saw it. As if on cue, I noticed the dominant silhouette standing in the middle of the road, contrasting itself against the rushing snowfall. Slowly emerging from the harrowing blizzard just a few yards away from the car ahead, the creature revealed itself. It was unlike anything that I had ever seen before, an abominable middle finger to all of God's creations upon this earth. Its skull resembled that of a crocodile resting over 10 feet above the ground. It also had a large crest fixated right over its eyes, reminiscent of the horns of a bull. Its razor-sharp teeth were stained red and blood dripped down from its maw and onto the snow-covered asphalt. The entire creature was covered in dense white fur like that of a polar bear. No wonder I hadn't spotted it until now. It was perfectly camouflaged among the powdery white snow. The rest of the body was hard to make out due to the storm, but I could tell that it was huge and easily towering over the vehicle that it slowly approached. It moved closer, trotting towards me in a jagged fashion. Red still dripped from its malformed mouth. It almost looked to be smiling. Almost. I looked around the cabin of the car, once more desperately scouring for anything that I could use to defend myself. Except for the bottle of liquor that I had laying about, I was at a loss. At least I could ease the pain of being torn limb from limb by having a little alcohol in my system, I thought to myself. Seeing the creature uncomfortably close now, I made an attempt to just drive away. It was true what the officer had said previously about the road being extremely narrow, but in the face of certain death, I figured it was worth a shot. Though as I was boxed in by both a car in front and one in my rear, I would have to succeed at the difficult maneuver in order to make an escape. A maneuver I wasn't too sure I could make in these perilous conditions, but I had to try. I applied my foot down onto the gas pedal, and the tires spun around in the snow, slinging bits of debris everywhere. Still stationary, I pressed down even harder, hoping to God that I would break free from my frozen constraints. In my panic, I gazed ahead and locked eyes with the creature. I could feel its wicked stare burrow deep into my soul. The wheels kept spinning, but I wasn't making any progress. I had waited too long. It was what I had feared earlier. I was trapped and there was nowhere to go. An ear-splitting hoot sounded just a few yards away, and I saw the creature had stopped in its tracks. It raised its head and let out another hoot. "What do you want?" I sobbed, punching the steering wheel in frustration. The wretched thing cocked its head, and it let out another vocalization. It was as if it wanted to grab my attention, or to distract me. Before I knew it, I felt a searing pain aching throughout my body, and my world was turned upside down, as a powerful force had slammed into the left side of the car, sending it flying. The SUV toppled over, accompanied by the sounds of crushing metal. Thankfully, I was wearing my seatbelt, or else I would have probably broken my neck while tumbling around inside the car like dirty laundry in a washing machine. The car eventually came to a stop. I found myself suspended upside down in the driver's seat. The vehicle had rolled down into the nearby ditch in the side of the road. Below me on the inside of the car's roof were fragments of shattered glass and heaps of snow. I hadn't quite processed what had happened, so I sat there for a moment, taking it all in. Suddenly, everything felt so calm and quiet. I questioned if I had even survived the ordeal. A warm liquid flowed down my chin into my mouth and then down the rest of my face. The stinging copper taste made me snap out of my trance, and I began to assess the situation. Outside, I heard heavy thuds rapidly approaching the vehicle. Each mighty stomp struck down into the snow with rhythm, and I could imagine the creature's mouth practically foaming at the prospect of a fresh new meal. The footsteps came to a sudden halt right outside of the driver's side window, and I turned my head to get a better look. A set of two large and powerful hind legs stood mere inches from my face. They were covered in what looked to be reptilian-like scales, lined with dense white fur, and the creature had 3 long talons that protruded from each foot. The deafening scraping of metal filled the air, as I imagined the creature began clawing away at the undercarriage of the SUV. From the fast-paced shifting of the monster's feet, I began to understand the sheer ferocity with which it attacked. It was going ballistic, striking the exterior at an incredibly fast rate. A combination of hoots and growls escaped its bloodthirsty jaws as it chipped away at the metal. It wouldn't be long until it was through. Another pair of heavy footsteps stopped just a short distance away on the opposite side of the car, right outside of the passenger side window. Like its predecessor, it too began clawing and kicking at the body of the car. The two creatures were relentless. I had never seen anything like it. Not even wild hyenas were this ravenous. I braced for impact as I unbuckled my seatbelt, positioning myself in such a manner so that I wouldn't break my neck upon impact. I hit the ground hard and was greeted by the sensation of cold snow and broken glass. The car rocked back and forth as the creatures violently attacked. It was obvious that I couldn't stay in here for long, but escaping the crushed remains of my vehicle and running out on foot didn't seem favorable either. I felt a deep desperation begin to set in as I realized that I would most likely not live to see another day. This was it. Just as all hope had faded and I began to accept my fate, my arm brushed up against a cold and oblong object. I shifted my body around to see what it was, and a light bulb had ignited inside my head as I gazed upon the still intact bottle of liquor that laid on the floor. My hands trembled as I reached deep into my pocket and I extracted my old Zippo lighter. However, I examined the Jack Daniels and gauged that the contents inside would not be enough for the powerful reaction that I was hoping for. So I opened the glove compartment and I began searching. Ah, there it is. I cheered as my fingers grazed upon the bottle of scented hand sanitizer, an old relic from the pandemic. It was nearly full as well. I opened the 2 bottles and began pouring the disinfectant alcohol down into the half-empty liquor bottle. The sanitizer mixed in with the strong bourbon, and it would surely be enough for an improvised Molotov cocktail. I ripped up a piece of cloth from my shirt and stuffed it down the bottleneck. With the Molotov in hand, I crawled toward the cracked windshield. I spun around and pressed my feet against the shattered glass frame. In an adrenaline-infused state, I pressed my legs down and applied pressure to the windshield. I strained my body and pushed my legs harder than I had ever done before in my life, wishing that I had spent more time at the gym prior to this. Due to its severely damaged condition, it didn't take long before the windshield came off, and the harsh winds of the outside world filled the cabin of the upside-down car. Above me, the creatures growled and bellowed, ripping and tearing away at the framework. I could see narrow slivers of light begin to penetrate the underside of the car, meaning that they were nearly through. I crawled through the new opening and out into the unforgiving blizzard. I feared that as soon as I stepped outside, one of the creatures would promptly place my head in its jaws and I'd be done for. But that never came. It seemed that they were too preoccupied with getting through the hard exterior of the SUV, and they had failed to notice that I had made my crafty escape. I kept crawling along the snow, praying to God that the beasts wouldn't turn their hideous heads and discover the easy meal slithering away right beside it. I didn't dare look back either. I couldn't bring myself to face the abominable animals. Once I had achieved a satisfactory distance away from the car, I finally turned around and rose to my feet. I ignited my lighter and set the Molotov cocktails ablaze. Don't try this at home, by the way. With all my remaining strength, I hurled the flaming bottle at the heap of scrap metal that used to be my car, and I watched in glory as the fire began to rise. I even think that I hit one of the creatures as I heard a dazzled yelp cry out. The flames weren't nearly big enough to cause a massive explosion or anything, but it was just enough to distract the creature so that I was able to make a run for it. I ran back out onto the road and continued past all the vacant cars that stood further up. The ice was painted red and a couple of human bodies, or at least what remained of them, were strung about the various abandoned vehicles. Eventually, I came upon the ambulance and the police car that had arrived about an hour prior. There were no signs of the officer who had talked to me, but deep down I knew what kind of fate had befallen him. In the distance, I heard ominous rumbling sounds coming from one of the creatures, followed by agitating hooting. Had they finally noticed that I was gone, and in that case, I didn't have a lot of time. I got inside the ambulance and planted myself down in the driver's seat. A frozen and severed human hand was attached to the wheel. I gagged as I ripped it off and tossed it out the open window. The creature's shrill cries echoed through the snowstorm, and it sounded like they were coming closer. Desperately, I turned the ambulance's ignition and to my delight it started up without a hitch. I kicked my foot down on the gas pedal and floored it out of there. Luckily for me, ambulances in this part of the US come well equipped to handle hazardous terrain and snow-covered roads. As I drove, I intently watched the rearview mirror hoping that I would get a last glimpse of one of the monsters, but the only things I saw were whirling snowflakes, dancing effortlessly along the icy winds that carried them. About 30 minutes of driving later, I arrived at a small town. The blizzard had begun to let up and the sun was starting to set on the horizon. I parked outside the first roadside hotel that I found and must have looked like a zombie as I frantically begged the receptionist to alert the authorities. She looked extremely nervous but did as I told her. After a while of talking, the kind receptionist informed me that the police would stop by first thing in the morning. Apparently, the nearest station was an hour's drive away, and the raging storm had caused major problems across infrastructure over all the state. Seeing as how nobody was in immediate danger, they would wait until the roads were cleared and they could travel safe again. I wasn't happy with this response, but I was too tired to really care. I checked into one of the hotel rooms and began typing all of this out on my phone. There are still so many questions left unanswered, but I imagine tomorrow will bring more news about the situation. I just hope that the other motorists along that highway made it out okay, but I have my doubts about it. The blizzard is now subsided, and outside my second-story window, I'm treated to a view of the clear night sky and the endless expanse of the tundra. I'll admit this landscape is beautiful, though it is a shame that I will now forever associate the tranquility of snowfall with the abhorrent horrors of events prior. However, that is not all. Since it was getting hot in my room, I decided to crack my window slightly ajar. For the past hour, I've been listening to the breeze floating across the frozen countryside. There are no sounds of wild animals out here. Oddly enough, but there is something else. Occasionally in the distance, the silence is broken by the ever so familiar and foreboding sound of a faint hoot crying out into the night. Endings always come too soon. Near the end, Granny was impatient. I couldn't understand the change. The stony old woman was the epitome of patience. Those last days when we still owned the farm were the epitome of how things end. I felt cold and the early morning of the first of the last days. I had to go out to cut firewood, not because it was required of me. Rather, I was intent on building muscle. I wanted to continue to grow in stature and to look like my dad and Uncle Bear. I took on any work that strengthened me. The chill bore into my arms and pressed against my chest. I could see my breath in the glow from the house as I crossed the muddy backyard. I heard a soft swirl of water in Jake's dip, the nearby pond of sudden swamp. A slight fear made me tremble. I had always feared the enormous alligators of a sudden swamp. I had watched them take prey, and while I respected them, my respect was merely a routine fear of them. If you chop now before dawn, you'll wake up Granny. Cousin Boone sat with his father's pipe, loaded with a sour-smelling herb that made his eyes red, and his jokes only funny to him. I had tried it once, and all it did was make me think the alligators were watching me for hours until it wore off. Just the smell of it made me worry about the return of such insistent paranoia. "There's a cold snap coming in," I told Cousin Boone. He smiled weirdly at me and said, "I know, let it freeze. It'll put hair on ya." He was grinning stupidly again, thinking that he was hilarious. I shrugged and asked, "What about Granny? We need to keep the house warm for her." I feared for the shivering octogenarian. The chill of fear was nearly indistinguishable from the blue air. The sound of these swampies swishly gentling in the pre-dawn sublight hushed us both. I freed the axe from the stump and looked in the direction of Jake's dip. "You gonna go look at the swampies, see if they can see you?" "They can, you know." Cousin Boone chuckled. "It wasn't even a joke." I shrugged. "There's something happening down there. You ever hear 'em this early? How often do they make any noise at all?" I looked at him over my shoulder. The porch light was in my eyes as I exhaled visibly. I knew my eyes were glittering in the dark, just like when the swampies watched from the still water. I heard my father's voice from the direction of the outhouse. He had walked up on us silently. There was a stillness, a morbid grave stepping of the descendants of Granny on her farm. My father said, "I'm gonna freeze over. Swampies know already. They always know what's going to happen." "How's that, Uncle Wolf?" Cousin Boone asked. "Ask Wade. He's got the knowing them. Reads all them old books." Dad told his nephew, Cousin Boone. "All right, I'll bite. How's a swampy know what's gonna happen?" Cousin Boone asked me. I sighed and gently chopped the air with the axe to send my impatience on ahead to where I wanted to tread. I turned after taking a breath and explained, "They are the oldest and wisest of creatures, unchanged while mountains and continents shifted. They are a fallen people, reverted to their atavistic modern metamorphosis, from bipedal bovrisuch sapiens to swampies. While man had merely walked for tens of thousands of years, their dynasties lasted for millions of years. Their science, indistinguishable from magic to us, altered their descendants for all time. While they languish in development, a proud heritage is still theirs. An ancestor remains watching over them, immortal and godlike. Childe Sobek. Those old books get you pretty high. Cousin Boone told me and then fell over laughing like a loon. His mirth ended with painful coughing, and he swore at me as I walked into the darkness, toward the swampies. I had considered that what I had read wasn't true, but it meant that the unbelieving world around me was real, and I wasn't ready to accept that yet. I needed the stories to be real. Granny was dying and we could lose the farm. The family would be scattered and I would have nothing. There were answers in those old stories that always said the things that had a magic to them. Magic and endings that said that everything would be all right. I felt an angry tear burn my cheek in the cold air. I stood at the edge of Jake's dip and leaned on the no swimming sign, with an alligator skull adorning it on top. The sun was rising through the trees of Sudden Swamp and trying to shine on Settler Farm. Granny Settler had refused to sell. refused to pay the difference of increased property taxes, and had refused to honor the foreclosure. Our family was in debt, and when she was gone, there would be nothing stopping Sheriff Goodwin from forcing us off of our inherited land. He was the dog of a banker man, and his leash was his elected position, his collar the law. I had many fears to contend with. I was afraid of the pain that would form in this empty place in my heart when Granny was gone. I was afraid of the destruction of my family and home. I was afraid of something that was beginning to happen that I had no control over, and of the edge of the axe. Not the axe in my hand, but the one in my mind. I knew something far more sinister and horrible was coming. I felt like my life was unraveling into some kind of nightmare fable. The surface of the water was slick and weird, starlit and reflective. I stared, knowing that the swampies were looking at me. I could feel their eyes on me, and that old sensation of terror made my teeth chatter and my nerves cry out, to take at least one step back from the edge of the liquid darkness. I refused to obey fear. It felt the same as when I was forcing myself to get into the freezing cold bathwater once a week to stay clean. While my body screamed and agonized at the brutal will of my demanding mind, the cold penetration almost caused a mutiny. As I often felt like I would leap out of the icy suds, I felt like I would step backwards to preserve myself. Fear tensed my muscles and I fought it, making myself stand still, commanding the calves of my legs to stop spasming and be still. The effort was distracting, thus I forgot the torment of my heavy fears. I was lost in the light as it found its way through the lingering night of sudden swamp. It was sunlight despite the misty coolness of it and its shifting form. As I stared, I could forget everything the world knew and just remember what I knew. The hour of magic. Jody Sobek, tell me how the axe comes. I am the Axeman. I prayed to a pagan god, the only god that I was sure cared about anything. I doubted that it cared about me or the settler farm. Did it at least care about a sudden swamp? I daydreamed of a rock untread by human foot, the rock within the swamp. Jody Sobek lived there still in memory, hidden in a cave that was all that was left of an antediluvian temple. If it was real, I would find it, the answer to my prayers and my questions. I worried it was just my imagination, that maybe I was starting to crack. Wade? Dad had come to find me. The tenderness in his voice could only mean one thing. I held my hand up to him, gesturing clearly enough that I understood without another word. I listened as he walked away. The silence of Settler Farm was finally gone. As I wept, I knew the swampies were watching me. It felt like the financial vultures were somehow to blame. I wanted revenge on them and told myself that the swampies agreed with me. An evil fog blurred my vision and my tears scalded my cheeks, leaving stains on my face where they froze and cut my skin. I dropped the axe and picked it back up. I whispered darkly, angry and bereaved, afraid of the change. I am the Axeman. And then I went back up to the farmhouse to say goodbye. As I strode past the chopping stump, I thunked the blade without effort and it stuck deep. The handle trembled and said, I am the axe. Inside the farmhouse, time had moved inexorably without me. The magic had kept me away while things had developed. I interrupted the moment, a talent that I shared with Uncle Bear. Get off my property, Dad was telling Bankerman and his suit-wearing thugs with their briefcases. It was good that I had left the axe asleep. I saw weapons in their hands, as deadly as an axe in the hands of a berserk young man that spent as much time building a body as he did reading. I had read grandfather's entire collection of books and I knew the words by heart. My heart was beating with rage and my heart was broken. Dad had sounded angry and impotent as he had addressed the financial vultures. When he saw my tear-burned face, sweater stretched over log-tossing bulk, the look of careless and violated fury in my eyes, he said in a way that was so genuine that they actually did what he said. "Y'all better go and come back later. That's my son Wade. He needs to be alone to say goodbye. Her body hasn't even gotten cold yet. Just go. I'll come back tomorrow." Bankerman looked at me, and despite his arrogance and senselessness, he knew that I would bite, literally. I watched them go, restraining my feet from letting me near them. I wanted to tear their arms off and bludgeon them all to death with their briefcases, but instead I let them escape. "I am the X-Man," I could hear myself saying. Somehow the thought of chopping wood calmed me down a little bit. "You can't do that, Wade. It'll make things worse," I heard Dad saying. He had said more, but I wasn't listening. "Do what?" I hesitated. Had I said that I was going to kill them? "Intimidate them. Don't intimidate them. It's bad enough as it is. They can make things really bad for us." "How could they make it worse? We're being evicted from our home, Dad. Granny's dead. I don't even know if the cave is real or how to find it." I was talking out loud and saying things that he didn't understand when I had mentioned the cave. "Just go say goodnight to her." Dad lowered his voice, realizing that he was scolding me. "You mean goodbye?" I lifted my hand the way that I did when I wanted to end a conversation. Dad slapped my hand back down and said, "Now isn't the time. We need to stick together." Dad's eyes were welling up with tears. I didn't know that he could cry. It hurt a lot to see him about to. I apologized, something that I had never done before. I wasn't good at it. "Freaking sorry, Dad. Jesus," I almost stuttered. I left him to go hide his pain and I went to go shed mine. I walked through the house, the open doors and windows making it as cold as the winter morning. There was a feeling of desolation and fear. I was afraid of the death in me that would happen when I met her dead. I was about to die inside. I went into her room and found her stiff carcass under a thick blanket. Her face was contorted and cruel, her eyes staring horribly. There was a stench already, and I kind of appreciated it. It made it easier to see that I was just looking at her dried up old body. She was gone, and all I was looking at was a spent shedding. Granny was in a higher and more dignified place. Her bones weren't here, just the coil of her life. Death had done good work, making sure that there was nothing worth worrying about, looking at her wasted remnant. A strange thought occurred to me. The best thing to do would be to chop her up with the axe and put her pieces in the wheelbarrow and take them to Jake's dip. They would never be able to pry her from her land, not without contending with the swampies. By the time they caught them all, she would be digested and a part of them, a part of the swamp. And then they would have to deal with Childe Sobek. I smiled, imagining the god's wrath on the financial vultures. "What's so funny?" Cousin Boone asked me. I hadn't even noticed that he was sitting in the corner in a rocking chair, in uncharacteristic reverence. He sounded desperate to break free from the pail that hid its grip on him, choking the humor from him. "I was thinking that I should bury her in Sudden Swamp," I admitted, hoping that he would find it amusing. You should. Why would it even matter? What are they gonna do about it? None of this matters. Nobody cares about anything that happens here. Nothing matters, not anymore. Cousin Boone sounded oddly maudlin. I looked at him and realized that he was also in great pain. Granny's death had killed his happiness. He had died inside, I had died inside, and Dad was dying in some dark and lonely place. We were all dead inside, not the way that Granny was dead, but in a way that somehow felt the same. The entry of Santa Claus interrupted the moment. "Uncle Bear," I stepped aside. Watching a Santa kneeling beside her bed was jarring and disturbing. Uncle Bear was still wearing the entire impersonation, bringing some joy to the mall owned by Banker Man. Everything in the county was owned by Banker Man, except for Settler Farm. He started crying loudly, letting his anguish out. Cousin Boone and I couldn't stand to watch his suffering, and so we left him to die inside alone. "A record-breaking blizzard is coming in," said the weatherman on the news. Dad was watching television. I had forgotten that we had even owned one. It was an antique with an antenna on it and a compatibility box attached. The Swampies knew it before the scientists. Dad told us as we sat with him. "Look," I pointed to the 4-day forecast. "It'll freeze tonight." "Maybe that will slow down Banker Man," Cousin Boone said. Dad and I ignored him and kept talking about the weather until there weren't anything else to say. A disheveled and distraught Santa came out of Granny's room. He looked insane with the costume and the mourning. I looked away as Uncle Bear dragged himself around, the huge man looking pathetic and interrupting the moment. "Why don't we have anything to drink?" he asked. "This was a dry house. Granny's rules," Dad reminded him. "Jesus wept, and we can't drink our tears." Uncle Bear sniffed. "Take that stuff off, Dad. You're creeping me out," Cousin Boone requested. Uncle Bear ignored him. Request denied. The television went to static and we all just kind of sat there and stared at it. Outside we could see that it had started snowing. It began to get very cold in the house and I got up and got my coat. When I came back, all 3 of the men were asleep. I threw blankets over all of them and I went back to reconsider my plan to hack apart Granny with an axe and toss the parts to the Swampies. It made me feel better to think that way. Her gaping mouth and wide eyes looked like something out of a horror movie. I lay down next to her, ignoring the nauseating stink. I opened my eyes, awakened by the sound of vehicles arriving. Glancing outside, I saw Sheriff Goodwin and Deputy Frank, Banker Man, and the assorted business suit thugs with briefcases. With a shotgun scepter, Sheriff Goodwin led them through the falling snow to the last stand of Settler Farm. They hadn't brought enough guns. Things were going to get ugly, I decided. There was no way that I was going to leave quietly, and I doubted my kin felt any different. "Come on out here, Settler boys. No need for things to get uncivilized. Time's up," Sheriff Goodwin said, the last thing that he would ever say in his confident and boastful-sounding drawl. There was a kind of calmness, a sort of calm before the storm. A literal storm was blowing in. My head was full of visions of carnage and terror. This is it. There's no more running from it, I told myself. Hades howled as a white wind, bringing the flurry and frost. The record-breaking blizzard arrived and it hit Settler Farm with all of its winter wrath. It wasn't going to stop until it was all over. I felt the fear of the axe edge in my mind. "I am the Axe Man," I whispered, unable to hear the words. I went through the dark house, leaving the dead body of the old woman where I had slept beside her. Deputy Frank was counting down from some number and nearing blast off. I heard Uncle Bear's double barrel click shut audibly in some blackened corridor of the creaking old house. I had no idea where Dad was until I heard the sputter of a chainsaw. I almost laughed, hoping that he had put on his ski mask with the 8 tiny reindeer pulling the sleigh, stitched to it lovingly by Mom. I wondered if her and Granny were reunited in whatever happens after death. Out back, I found the axe still buried in the stump. I ran my hand across its handle and remembered what it had told me earlier. You are the axe. The front door was broken open and Sheriff Goodwin and Deputy Frank intruded in our home without our permission. We didn't care about their warrants or eviction notices or any of their self-appointed authority. Granny was gone and we were untethered. We wouldn't be unhomed by godless men. They found Cousin Boone and he came at them with his bowie knife. Sheriff Goodwin managed to take him down with the butt of his shotgun and they wrestled him down and put handcuffs on him. They had to leave him under the static of the television as he growled and raged like a madman. He was the calm one of the settler boys. There were screams from out front as Dad chased these suit-wearing thugs around with a running chainsaw. When they fell, their screams of terror became blood-curdling, as Dad gave them awful wounds where they lay. I could visualize the men in black with their hands, fingers, wrists, and arms up in the air defensively as they lay in their bag. The spinning chain blade could tear through a fallen log with minimal effort, and it would make short work of the limbs of fallen men. I really hoped he was wearing that Christmas ski mask. After freeing the axe, I went back into the house. The sheriff and his deputy would have to go back out to protect the bureaucrats. I found Cousin Boone where they had left him and saw that he was pulling his legs up through the handcuffs, a neat trick that got his cuffed hand out in front of him. I felt horrific fear as I heard gunshots out front. I wanted to run out to help Dad, but I made myself stand there and not run out. I would get shot doing that. It was not the time to panic, even though I felt enough fear to lose control. I forced my feet to obey me and I stood my ground. "Get up," I told Cousin Boone. I felt some relief as I heard the chainsaw still running and a variety of screams from out front. "You shot me, you hick sheriff," one of the thugs in suits was yelling. He couldn't be shot that bad if he was complaining about it like a baby. "Get in the car, it's a war zone." Banker Man seemed to be addressing his wounded assistant. The wind was howling louder and a tree branch came down and broke a window. Cousin Boone put his chain atop the coffee table in the living room, and I used the axe on it. It took me 2 swings to break both the chain and the table. "You okay?" I asked Cousin Boone. He got up and got his knife. "I'm gonna gut that sheriff," he snarled. "No, they see you free and they'll just shoot you. Come with me." I collected my mind. We left the farmhouse behind and went down to Jake's Dip. The water was frozen solid. I walked out onto it, heading to Sudden Swamp. The blizzard raged around me. "That can't be safe to walk on," Cousin Boone called behind me. I was terrified and I knew that he was right, but it was our best move. Seeing my determination to go into the swamp, he followed me out onto the creaking ice. All around us, the snouts of the swampies were sticking out of the ice. The alligators were sleepy and breathing from under the water, their massive bodies under the ice. Sudden Swamp's alligators are the largest in the whole world, total freaks of nature. "What are they doing?" Cousin Boone asked, creeped out by the alligator snouts sticking out of the ice all around us. "Brumation," I told him. "It's like they're hibernating, one of their survival strategies." They're classic survivors, I told him, my voice shaking from the fear and cold. What are we doing? Cousin Boone asked me. There's a cave in the swamp. I have to find it. The answers are there, I told him. This is crazy. I'm going back. Dad and Uncle Wolf need our help. You're not going to let them fight those trespassers alone, are you? Cousin Boone chastised. I kept walking and left him behind. He turned back thinking that violence was the answer. I didn't know what the answer was, but I doubted that it was to be found in the horror of battle. I heard more gunshots from the farm. The blizzard in the distance muffled their unmistakable thunder. The boom of the double barrel sounded. I knew that Uncle Bear had popped off from somewhere in the house, still dressed as Santa, and fired both barrels into somebody's face. I finished crossing Jake's Dive, walking on the water past these swampies as they slept. I reached a sudden swamp and went in, carrying my axe and wearing a warm coat. There were more swampies all around. The whole place was infested with alligators. I didn't know where I was going. I was afraid of what I would find. I used my fear as a compass, telling my feet to walk upon the weak ice in whatever direction terrified me the most. How easy it would be to go back to the farm and fight with my kinsmen against the invaders. I knew that knowing the answers would be far worse than getting shot by Sheriff Goodwin and watching the settler boys die, red upon the snow. Nothing could be worse than the answers. And yet some fear far deeper and colder insisted that I was somehow even more afraid to die without knowing the truth. Was the cave real? Was anything? The blackened tear streaks on my face were a comforting pain, telling me that I was immediately alive. Existential dread was much harder to gauge, as it shifted from one footstep to the next. I seek your temple. My prayer held whatever magic was left in this world. The blizzard quieted when I arrived. I was in the heart of Sudden Swamp, and there was a twisted and rocky island, covered in dead vines and the grasping branches of sinister-looking trees. I stared, an empty feeling of morbid fascination holding me on the ice that I stood on. I walked off of the ice and onto a block of solid rock. I stood there in the calm of the storm, snow drifting around me, and I held the axe like it could defend me from the terrors within. There is a cave used exclusively by alligators and full of bones and rotting meat. I crawled in there and into that darkness. My mind raced with the sensation of forcing myself into the cold water, forcing myself past the fear, making myself move despite feeling petrified and wanting to jump out. There was no going back. The cave was real. Inside the cave, I found a structure, the walls glowing unnaturally so that I could finally see. The swampies didn't come so far inside, and there were no more fresh bones. I looked around and saw that where I stood was the heart of the temple, and that was all that was left of it after millions of years. The air was dry and barely breathable, as though the oxygen were too old for my mortal lungs. The temperature was stable and unchanging, although cool, it felt warm compared to the swamp. I looked around and realized that there was no light. I was seeing from memory, a strange sensation of being able to see without seeing, like I just knew what I was looking at. Even though the artificial light had no illumination, all of it was crafted, the stone, the light, and even the air that I was breathing. It was the ancient magic of the crocodile gods. I have come for answers, Chile Sobak, I spoke. As I said the words, I was understood, as though my human language were so simple that it could easily be deciphered. What hurt me I didn't understand. Perhaps it was the structure, or perhaps it was the god of the swampies. It knew all about me and had let me come, allowed my entry, and then it gave me the answers. Like hieroglyphics, the images swam in my head. At first I was terrified to have thoughts that were not mine moving around inside of my mind. When I fought the urge to reject them and paid attention, I began to understand the moving images. The brain waves in my head shifted to what are now known as alpha waves, and it felt like I was watching a cartoon. A very long and scary cartoon. I was sweating despite the chill. Time seemed to be holding still, and yet I was vaguely aware that as centuries and millennia of crocodile history flashed behind my eyes, that it was only a few hours in the cave. I shook and trembled as I could not contain even one more day of their world in my overflowing mind. It was a terrifying experience. Nothing about their world was good or peaceful. Their atrocities and wickedness made my problems seem like child's play. I knew the greater fear of knowledge that I had feared I would know. A kind of madness eased me along as I meekly thanked Jode Sobek for the answers. I left the cave and found that evening was approaching. The thin ice was already melting and some of the swampies were starting to thaw back out. I saw their snouts opening and closing as they woke up hungry. I could hear their thoughts, images of what they saw and heard and sensed and dreamed. I had become a part of their world. When I left Settler Farm, I would take them all with me. Ghosts, reptilian haunts, and nightmares for answers. When the swamp was all gone, it would still be a part of me. I feared the state that I was in, knowing that I was forever changed. I knew the answers, I knew the truth. The truth was eternal dread. When I reached the farmhouse, I saw that it was burning down. I wandered around with the axe in my hand, my face looking like I had running mascara from the frostbite from my tears. I found where Uncle Bear had fallen, dressed as Santa and wielding a double-barrel shotgun. He had battled the intruders to the death. A burning Santa had come running out of the farmhouse and died face down in the snow with bullet holes in his back. I found Cousin Boo next. He had died atop Deputy Frank, whom he had stabbed repeatedly with his enormous razor-sharp hunting knife. Somebody shot him and he fell dead atop the cop. I went out front and found that nobody had escaped. All around were the fallen thugs in suits blazed by the chainsaw and in pieces. Dad was breathing his last, leaning on the snow-chained wheel of the sheriff's truck as the red and blue lights flashed in the falling snow. The blizzard was long gone and the cold air had helped keep Dad alive for me. I went to him and lifted his Christmas ski mask that Mom had made for him. "Did we get 'em all?" "Pretty much," I told him. He coughed out some blood and looked up at me. "You didn't fight." "I found the cave," I told him. He nodded like it meant something to him, although he had no idea what I was talking about. "Good man, I'm proud of you. This party was stupid anyway," Dad told me. Behind me, our house was burning down, and his brother and nephew were dead. I told him. "It wasn't a party, Dad." "That's because there's no booze." Dad chuckled like Cousin Boone when he thought he was being funny. The laugh turned into a cough and then he died. "I love you, Dad," I told him and let him go. I heard the cock of his shotgun behind me and the voice of Sheriff Goodwin say, "Drop the axe, son. Let's end this thing on a peaceful note." I put my empty hands in the air and he cuffed me. "You tell me where Bankerman is and I'll make sure you aren't blamed for this whole mess. Sound fair?" He told me from behind with a loaded shotgun pointed at my head while I was in handcuffs. I felt a kind of horrified realization that I knew where he was. Shivering, I said, "Above me he is, on the ice. I am so hungry." I channeled the thoughts of the swampies, translating them. "On the ice? He's down at Jake's dive," Sheriff Goodwin asked. "Yes, and I knew that I was right. "What's that idiot doing there? Come on, march in front of me. Try anything and I'll blow your head clean off. You get it, son?" Sheriff Goodwin spoke. I said nothing and started leading the way around the burning house towards Jake's dive. We stopped at the no swimming sign with the alligator skull on top of it. We saw a banker man out on the ice, trapped. The ice was breaking apart all around him, and swampies in various stages of wakefulness were poking their snouts out of the ice. "Help me, you idiots!" he screamed to us. I felt my hands get unlocked. "Go out there and get him, or I'll shoot you dead, boy." Sheriff Goodwin pushed me with the barrel of his shotgun on my back. It was then that my fears had reached their highest and most horrified state. Panic made me stand there at the water's edge, seeing the swampies getting ready to take prey. I felt like they were all watching me. I could hear Cousin Boone's ghost saying, "None of it matters." I forced my feet to move, one step and then another. I was approaching Banker Man, forced to come out onto the ice to save him from his own stupidity. The swampies were ready to take him as the ice broke under him with a splash. There was nothing that I could do as he plunged into the darkness to be drowned by hungry crocodilians. Breakfast in bed. I said their thoughts out loud, translated. I started back toward the shore and felt the ice snap under me. I went in. The freezing cold water instantly chilled me. I could see through the eyes of the swampies as they closed in on me. My own eyes closed in reflex to the splash. I was able to push up through the ice near the shore, panic gripping me hysterically. I gasped for air and saw the flash and heard the thunder of Sheriff Goodwin's shotgun. "Hurry, the gators are coming." As I blinked and tried to walk to shore in waist-deep water, I could see myself from their perspective as they closed in for the kill. I wasn't going to make it. Sheriff Goodwin was shooting at them as they neared me, but they ignored the blast unharmed. "You matter," I heard the voice of Childe Sobek telling me. The voice was like the hieroglyphs, a wordless thought, an image imbued with meaning. The swampies obeyed their god and they let me go. I got out of the water, drenched and shivering. Sheriff Goodwin just stared at me in amazement. "You got balls, kid, holy cow." I'm freezing, I tried to say, my lips turning blue. I stripped from my wet clothing and stood in the frosty air. Sheriff Goodwin put his coat over my shoulders and then put me in handcuffs out front. I was in no shape to give him any trouble, he decided. "Yeah, come on. Let's get you arrested and in a warm blanket." Sheriff Goodwin took me back up to his vehicle. He never bothered to arrest me, and I was never charged with anything. Instead, I was commended for trying to save a banker man. I was released from jail with scars and memories and a gift from my God. When things end, when they truly end, something continues. Death is just an ending, but it isn't all that there is. I know the answers now, and I live in constant fear of realizing them. Knowing what happens after the end is the most terrifying thing of all. For me, for now, I'm still answering, with patience, to the end.